Okay, from now on, people can hear us. Yeah? You can speak if you want.
Let's see. Hello, hello.
Yeah, you can just keep speaking while it says the audio outside of my computer.
Okay, okay. I'm in there. I cannot hear. Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Just like a 30-second delay. We have to keep in mind.
Okay, so people can hear us. We can hear them, but they can't see us for the moment. So let's get this thing kind of set up here. I'll give them a little bit of time. Hey, Michael. How are you doing? Ooh, what's this? This is a new feature from... Oh, fans principles. Oh, there's a new fun thing in YouTube. Didn't know that. Let me get this here. Play around in Substance Designer. Perfect. So I'm just gonna come here now, and I just hope this works now. I should have done before I start streaming. These crowns, the crowns are for people who are fans who have been in the stream for quite a lot, I think, or that support us a lot. I'm just not sure.
Give me a second, please, Ezequiel.
Sure.
My camera is doing
weird
stuff. There you go. That should be good.
Perfect.
Okay, sorry.
That's alright. Just get this here. Perfect. And oh, let me just, before we do that, I forgot I have to tell Mike we're starting as well. Please. See, more people are joining. Ooh. Send this. It sound good, guys? Wanna see what you have over there? Volume is low. Whose volume is low? Alexa. Can you let me know? Hey, Artistic Freak, how are you doing, my friend? Everybody, please speak. Yeah, let's do a little bit sound test. Wanna say some words one by one before we start, guys?
Yes, is my audio okay?
I think yes, for me at least.
Yep.
Yes, good. Yep. We have a good there. Let's see, Jovan.
Same. Is the audio good?
Yeah, I think it's good as well. Okay. Well, Javi.
Testing.
Yeah, mine. Oof.
Yeah, we have a problem there. 2 Javis now. Perfect. And sound
I'm not
is
sure
good
if
as well.
mine is. How's mine? I'm getting bad connection from Discord apparently.
No, but sound is good.
Okay.
Wait. It can be also because I have my own computer volume a little bit down. Let me just fix that. There we go. Is the music on the background bothering or not, Michael? For example, I see that you're talking about your volume mixer and so on. All good. Perfect. Okay, let's just switch screen. You're gonna see a black screen for a moment, guys, because I forgot to set up this one again. And now you can see us. We are here. Yeah? Is this workshop gonna stay on YouTube? Unfortunately, I think no. I have to see it later, but the idea was to keep it a little more kind of private and special for everyone. So for the moment, this is where you're gonna be able to see it. Yeah. So today is a special day because not only we have a list of big guests here for many of you who are students or artists who want to learn more about texturing, but because we are also pushing things forward in FMA as a community and in many other aspects. Yeah. And part of those aspects are not only including Joe and Jovanvir as our new mentors in the community, but also by having Javier Perez as one of our new guests, who is an artist with a lot of experience. And well, we're going to talk about that also later. Want to give a little introduction about yourself, each of you guys, as a starter?
Yep, I can introduce myself. I'm Joe Taylor. I'm working at That's No Moon. I previously worked at Rebellion. I was an environment artist to begin with, and then moved into material art.
Perfect. Jovanvir, want to go you next?
Yeah, I'm an material artist at Moon Studios. I work on Call of Duty. So I make materials for almost every year.
Well, and then we have the fantastic duo of Javiers. We have two Javiers. Let's go with Javier Perez first, and then we can follow up both of us. Javi Benitez.
Yeah, sure. My name's Javier Perez. I'm currently the lead material artist at PlayStation Studios Visual Arts. Been in the industry for about 13 years now. Worked on a bunch of different titles, most recently being Last of Us Part 1 and 2, and was an environment artist on a bunch of other AAA games.
Perfect. So today we have a lot of artists in here. We have a lot of talent as well, and we wanted to give you something special that you wouldn't be able to get maybe in other places that will really help you. Yeah. One of the things I always say is that the best way of learning is by seeing other artists work or see their work and how they approach their problems. And well, today Joe is going to do that, just as a small demonstration and to kick on today's stream. So Joe, whenever you want, you can show us what is it that you were working on and what was your today's presentation.
Yeah, let me screen share. So there we go. Can you see that all right? Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
So nice. So yeah, for today I wanted to show partly some stuff that you can do in Designer, but then also the kind of methods of how you should use other software and how you can, when you're approaching something, not to pigeonhole yourself into just doing everything 100% in Designer all the time, how you could use other softwares. I've used in the past, for example, ZBrush to design a workflow, 3ds Max or Blender to model things like a trim sheet. I've used fully Designer stuff. I've used scan stuff. Just recently started playing around with Gaia and like World Machine. So I can show like some stuff just in Designer first, and then I want to show something a bit more complicated of using other different softwares. So first thing is like I was messing around with this recently. This was just like a doodle that I was doing in Substance Designer. I tend to create like random graphs and start just playing with nodes sometimes. So this is what this started as, was playing around with different shapes using the triangle grid grayscale node and using that as a way to then create cliffs, because I found that it could be can give you these really nice like angular shapes. And so I was testing out using those. That was just like, a different way of working that I wouldn't normally make this kind of material. So I think it's important to like keep continuing to try things in a way that you wouldn't normally do, so you're not just kind of repeating the motions and using the same workflow all the time, because sometimes you stumble across something kind of interesting and you can reuse it on other different materials and stuff like that. So for this one, I did this workflow where I used triangle grid grayscale, and then I could create big shapes and blend multiple of them together, just adjusting the X and Y amount to get different results, and adjusting like the rotation and stuff like that. And then from there, I did an edge detect and bevel this thing. It looks kind of strange to begin with, but I was essentially warping this shape, and then in the end, I end up doing like a flood fill on it to create these shapes. And you can see how like from there, I go to being able to like warp the normal map and get something interesting like above. But in this case, it just shows that like this isn't probably the way that people tend to create a cliff, right? You'd often plug in some shapes into something like a tile sampler or something, and then layer it on, or you'd height blend multiple different shapes like Voronoi pans and things like that. So this is just like a different way of doing it I wouldn't normally do, but hopefully that shows even though I've made this type of material lots of times, like I'm trying it a different way each time. I'm not necessarily like doing the same thing every time. You can see here, like I used a flood fill to bounding box size to mask out some smaller shapes. It's like the original pattern had these smaller shapes in there, which just puts too many little shapes in the crevices. So like masking that out before I do this. And then in this case, this is just me like testing out the nodes, testing how I would create a baseline for this material. It's not necessarily taking it to final. So here I tested just with like some scan data, some egg scan color textures, and I'm plugging that into gradient dynamic using the AO for that to drive that, and then I'm running like an overlay over that. So currently, like that's literally all I'm doing on the color. So it's very simple, but it's just like a nice way to be testing and doing different shapes, and I can play with like the color like this and just get different results. And then when I get something that I like, I can then be like, right now I'm going to actually take this through to final material, because this was more of an experiment kind of thing. I've been doing a lot of that recently, because you just pick up lots of different things. So I wanted to show that same logic, that same principle of trying something a way that you wouldn't normally do it in my other material I worked on, which was this Baroque sailing material, which is this one. So for this, like I've seen a few people have made this type of material and typically try to make it basically fully in Designer. And while that is fair, like to do, I've done similar things when I made like a gun in Designer and stuff like that. For this, I didn't want it to be like I spent 3 months on a project to create this thing in Designer in a way that isn't something you would do in production. So I treat this one as something I would do in production in how I approached it, and basically just using different softwares for whatever was quicker and merging them all in to get the result, rather than just trying to do everything in Designer. So you can see the way I started it was I broke it down into a pattern that I wanted to create, which I set a graph up for this for my layout. And then I generated these patterns just in Designer because it's quick for me to create and quick for me to edit them. So you see I'm just literally using like cubes and bevels and things to create these shapes. It's very simple, but I build it up to create this pattern, which is a quarter of the texture. And then I mirror it to all the corners to build my shape. And then I'm using the curve node to actually create these shapes here, like get the actual like bevel to it. And then I'm outputting all of this to be my base starting point for my height map essentially. And then on top of this, I'll be scattering all of those elements, all the ornamental elements and trims and things like that. So next, I was breaking things down into what can I make in Substance Designer, what can I make in ZBrush, what can I use Photoshop for, to just speed things up. So in this case, like I created what I labeled them as trims, which was typically things that I was scattering with a spline for the most part in the final graph. I created these ones, a lot of these ones in Designer, because they're relatively simple and quick to make, and it'd probably take me just as long to model the thing or create it in ZBrush, just because I'm fairly comfortable with doing it in Designer. So for some people, it might be quicker to model this thing, or it might be quicker to do it in ZBrush, Blender. So you just got to kind of like pick what is going to be quicker for you. So in this case, I chose these ones to make in Designer because I think in my mind, I was thinking I can create those much faster in here than anywhere else. Then you get to these shapes. So I created this one, right? And for me, I thought, well, I can spend hours and hours and hours probably creating this in Designer because I was really focusing on a lot of like meticulous details. I tried to match this thing up very, very closely with the reference. So like this image on the left being like my render, and then this one being the reference. I tried to get it very, very, very close, and doing that level of like precision while trying to create this thing fully in Designer would be very, very, very time consuming and not very production friendly. So I created those ones in ZBrush. So the way that I did these was I actually looked at my reference. I can show you actually. I've got the pure ref file for this. But I actually got some reference. In some cases, I zoomed into some of the elements that I wanted to use, and then in some cases I actually like edited it. So this was the best image I could find of this element, and so what I did was I took it in Photoshop, edited it, like morphed the image basically and mirrored it just to get it looking straight on, so I can actually look at it and start looking at all of the details. So that's one way I did that. And then I took this, in some cases, I took this shape into Photoshop and I created a mask from it. And then I exported that as just a black and white mask and took it into ZBrush. And I used that to extrude a plane, and then I sculpted on top of it in some cases. So that just guaranteed that I know the silhouette is already spot on. I just need to focus on the details inside it. So that's kind of like the process I use for some of these elements. I can open the ZBrush file and show some of these, but yeah, so I did those ones with that. Then I had the ornaments, which are typically the most complex parts, the bits that would be the most time consuming, the bits that would be the most ideal to not do 100% designer workflow for if I want to do it as quick as possible. So for these ones, like I did use ZBrush to create these, and I just took them into Marmoset and I just baked each one to a plane basically to get this height map. I did that for each one of these elements that I wanted. For this one, for example, I tried a couple of things. Like I could have done it with just the individual elements and then scattered it with a splatter circular or something. But in this case, like again, I followed the reference very closely to the point where like every single like element like matches with the reference in terms of its placement. They're not just randomly scattered around. So in that case, I found that would just be quicker for me to just do in ZBrush. And you can mirror things. Like you can see here, this is mirrored. Like I'm not necessarily like going all the way around and placing them. I can mirror sections, and then on top of that, I can add one or two to break it up so that it isn't 100% symmetrical everywhere, which is what I did for that one in ZBrush. For this one, you can see this one's the same. Did that one in ZBrush. This was one of the ones that I used the method of using an image from Photoshop, generating a mask for extruding it in ZBrush, and then sculpting onto it. So for these, like generally, time-wise, like I think I spent, for some of these pieces, it took a little bit longer. Like some pieces took longer than others, but in some cases, like some of the pieces were like 2, 3, 4 hours sculpt. And in my mind, like to make some of those things in Designer, it's like gonna take more like three days or something to make the thing 100% in Designer for something like this, because going in ZBrush and drawing like a line exactly where you want it, how you want it is just very fast, and you don't have to try and warp and morph all of these different shapes together. So it was much quicker for those. Some elements you could see like these are just simple shapes. So I do these in Designer because, again, it's going to be much quicker for me to create them here. Shapes like this, I did these ones in Designer. So in this case, I had this centerpiece. I created these elements in ZBrush. There's not as many elements as it looks, right? Because things are mirrored across. Like there's just this element mirrored, this element mirrored. You know, there's only like maybe 6 elements, and I can reuse some of these elements in the other ornamental trims as well. So it's not necessarily a one-off. But here, like I'm height blending in bits that I've done in Designer as well to blend this on, right? This center part and this bit's in Designer, and then these like star shapes are in Designer as well. So it's like a mixture. It's not that I'm relying on one or the other. In my mind, I could just do that quicker than it would take me to model it in ZBrush or something, or Blender. So then I created like an ID mask for those ones, plugging them into an RGBA merge node, just so that I had a few different masks to be able to do the color later. And that was it for the ornaments. I made a couple of like really quick tools. Like now and then, if you're doing a graph and you find that you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, I tend to just make a tool for it really quick to prevent myself doing that. One thing I had was like this multi-blend one, for example. It was very simple, and I essentially just kept doing like different blends where I was adding a blend and then another blend and another blend and adding them all together. And I was like, I don't want to keep doing that. So I just set up a node where I can plug them in to the one and adjust like the blending mode here. And I could have like 10 different ones or something all doing an add sub or a multiply or something, rather than to do that as manually. So I tend to do that in some graphs when I speed things up. So then the final graph is essentially the main graph, which might take a second to load up here because it's gonna do a lot. It's gonna do a lot of stuff. So I might quickly try and open up some of the ZBrush stuff. For this material, I figured it would be better to show the thought process and mixing and matching softwares, just because going step by step through every node is not really gonna work out for a graph of that size. So you can see in this case, I had this element that was in ZBrush, and you can see that for this, I had some different folders with the different elements that were the bits I sculpted. There's only there's about 6 of these, I think, that I did, so there's not that many that were sculpted for the project, but it's just the main like centerpiece and really complex ornamental parts that I did that for. But the nice thing is when you're sculpting stuff to get baked down to a height map, it doesn't matter about like the sides of the objects, right? Because it's going to get stretched straight down anyway on the height map. So you can kind of just do what looks good straight on. And if you press P or you press here to go into look at it orthographic, that's essentially what you're going to see when you bake it down to a height map. So it doesn't matter, like for example up here, when I sculpted this, like that this just ends here because you never see it. So thinking when you're sculpting something to go on a height map, you also kind of can do it quicker because it's not like I'm sculpting it to be a 360 asset that I'm using. Things don't have back faces. Things are flat on the back or sometimes open holes on the back. It's just what you're looking at straight on essentially. And I have that for a bunch of different elements. Like this one, for example, has like all these. I sculpted about, I think it was about 6 or 7 different elements that were these smaller elements, which were very fast because you could look at this. It's literally a sphere and just draw some lines on it, right? And then I just place those around essentially to get the result I wanted. So that's kind of how I did the stuff in here in ZBrush. If I go in here, you'll see like how I created a ZBrush file every time I kept doing versions, just so I always had like history for it. But in here, this is how I did like the head, for example, for one of them. I created this mask in Photoshop. Like I just created the background part, created the front part, and then I just used that in ZBrush to extrude out and sculpt on top of that as a starting point. So that just allowed me to really, as long as I stick to that silhouette, then I know that I'm nailing the silhouette. So this is the graph. And you can see like down here, again, to speed things up, this was around the time where they just added the spline nodes to Designer. So I think some of these actually, a couple of these are deprecated. They're a little bit different because it was right as it got added. And it was one of the reasons for doing this project was learning the spline nodes because it was a new thing that just come out. So in this case, I bring in my layout, which is the one that I created in that layout graph, which is just the main pattern. And I use this mask to spline to essentially get like the edge of the pattern. And essentially, if you imagine this histogram, select this, you'll see if I adjust like the position, you're essentially grabbing different elements across that gradient, right? So you've got this border, and then I can control where I want the spline to sit. So if I want the spline to sit here on the gradient or here on the gradient, I'm just adjusting this like so. And that's essentially what I'm doing inside the spline node. In the spline node, there is there's settings for like offset, for example, and I'm using those to push this further in and out on the shape, which means that all of my spline nodes are just using the same input, which is this original map, which makes it very cheap. The spline nodes are running really performant here to say how many of them I actually use. So I scatter here like these circular patterns, for example, this trim. So this was one of the ones that I did in Designer. I'm scattering that one along that spline. But then equally, I have other elements like this one, which is the one I did in ZBrush. I'm scattering that one with a spline. So you can see this one, I have the two inputs plugged in because on the reference, it alternates from one to the next, alternates between two different shapes. So I alternate between those by plugging both of those inputs in. I've got this trim, I had to test kind of like, how is this going to tile well? And for this one, like I found that if I did it on a spline, it was breaking too much because I wanted it here where it's very structurally sound in how it connects, and sometimes the spline doesn't connect those exactly how you wanted. So in this case, like I didn't want, and plus this doesn't go on all of the shapes. This element is just specifically in the middle here like this. Like it's only in these shapes, it's not everywhere. So for these ones, I decided to just not do it with the spline. I just got the shape that I wanted and I just adjusted it. I used that multi blend tool that I said that I did. I basically just rotated the thing to 45-degree angles and then just mirrored it. And I did the same for the star shape, right? The star shape is essentially just this one section and then another one, and I just mirror it a bunch of times, or you could just plug in like a splatter circular or something. You can see I continue to do this same workflow for all of this. Like all of these are scattered using splines, and then when you get to the individual elements, like these main ornamental elements, these are in specific locations. They're not really like something you would splatter with a spline. They are placed in very specific spots. So I essentially place those ones by hand with a transform. But the way that I broke things down first was within my layout. When I showed earlier that I created the layout from a small section and then mirrored it. By doing that, it means that I have the pattern like this, right, which I'm mirroring into the four corners. That means that like when I place the unique elements, I only need to place in this element. For example, I can place it in here. I don't need to do it 4 times. So I just did that and mirrored it all across. In some cases, I actually broke this down even further, and I halved this straight down the middle here. and then I halved it straight down the middle again this way. So I managed to essentially, when I was placing some of the elements, I actually placed it like 2 or 3 times, and it, propagated across the whole thing. It was placed about 50 times across the actual final height map, just by like mirroring stuff to speed things up. So for the height, I have my layout. You can see I'm blending on all of these different elements that I had from my splines at the bottom of the graph. And each time I did this, each time I blended one of these on, some of them I was just adding them. I did that partially because I could do a height blend for everything, but it will get more, it'll chug the graph. It's quite a big graph. If I just keep doing height blends 500 times in the graph, it's going to get pretty slow. So I added things in some cases. In other cases, I added because when you add something, you're going to get like a free, if the shape curves, it's going to follow the curve shape underneath, which means I don't have to conform it to the shape underneath. It's already doing that. Like in this case, if I plug that one into a normal, and look at that, this shape is going to be conforming to this underlying shape just because I've done an add. If I did it on a height map, a height blend, it wouldn't have conformed, and then I'd have to blend something on to conform it. So a lot of these I actually just added them on. But because I generated them with a spline, I used the spline to be the mask for example, like for the color, because I'm doing an add and not a height blend, I don't have a mask to be able to use for my color. So because I have the splines, I can essentially get my spline mask and clamp that in and then use that as my mask for my color when I come to do it. So I did that the whole way through basically, and this is what this section is above, is creating a mask for my color. So each time I do one of these blends and I blend that on, I also just add it to the color. And I generated for my color, essentially adding them all together, I created this mask, which was, I labeled it like my ornaments mask. This is all of the elements that are metallic on the material. And then I use that loads of times throughout creating the color and roughness. And then for my actual height, you can see I just continually blend each of those shapes on. This one is along a spline. This one here is individually transformed, but then, mirrored everywhere. So I just placed it a few times. But you can see, like, it appears everywhere. That one I actually placed. If I show you how many times I placed it, had this shape. I positioned it like so. So it looks kind of random, right? Like it's just this small section of the material, but then when you mirror it from here, you can see how this bit here is mirrored from this bit here. This bit here is mirrored from here. And then I mirror it again, and I get it everywhere that I need to place it, but I'm only placing it a handful of times. And it's in a very specific spot because it's not something I can really scatter very easily with a spline. So that's what I did for those. And then I continue to blend in all these individual elements until I get to the end, pretty much. I get to this point, which is where I then add a bit of wear. And for that, it's very subtle. The values are so subtle because this height has a lot of depth. The values in the height map at this point are so subtle, you basically can't see them. So when you're doing this, you need to, look at your actual height that you're working on, or, use a normal node for something like this so that I can see what it's actually doing. And because it's adding this kind of grunge, right? Like on here, this noise, this breakup. But in the height, I'm not going to be able to even see that at this point because it's so subtle. So that's how I worked on those. And then I end up with my final height map, which looks like this. And then for this, I wanted to also add some like surface breakup on top. I didn't want that to appear in the height because I didn't want to add too much noise to the height. I want it to be pretty smooth so that when I have the thing displaced at not a crazy resolution, it doesn't have all these little jaggy spikes and stuff, and I don't have to blur it too much or anything to get rid of it. So I did also add some elements like this kind of noise and stuff on top, just purely in the normal as well, just to avoid any of that high frequency stuff. So I blend that on here, and then I use all of those masks that I showed before like these ones that I generated in here to essentially create my color. Very simply starting from uniform values and using those masks, because there's a lot of color on this material, blending in all the different colors with, you know, a uniform value to get as close as possible to my reference color. And then, you know, at this point I have a flat value on everything. From there, I'm doing like a flood fill to grab all of those shapes and essentially, you know, add some randomization so that they're not all just 100% identical. There's a bit of difference in the color there. And then for my ornaments, as I had like some of these elements, for example, I start adding in the color into the ornaments, which again is just coming from those masks, which in this case, this is the one that I mentioned earlier, I packed into the texture in the actual ornaments node. So when I actually drag that in there, I have, you know, I have things like this centerpiece one, which is like an RGBA mask, which has, you know, the height map, but it also has like other elements like masks and stuff like that. That's what I'm essentially using to generate the color, and that way I already prepared all of the masks I needed on the individual elements outside of this main graph, just to make it simpler. Then from here, I'm adding some breakup to it and some like wear and stuff like that. I'm always pulling in for the grunges, like I'm reusing grunges in the graph because it's quite a big graph. I don't want it to chug again. So I reuse the grunges. I have other grunges elsewhere in the graph I'm using. And I'm always directional warping it by, you know, by this flood fill to random grayscale so that it offsets all of the values and I don't get a uniform overlay over everything. And then from here, I added some wear. You can see like for the wear, what I actually did was it started from my grayscale mask that I had. I multi-directional warped it pretty intensely by a pretty blurred grunge, to be honest, to get this. And then I actually did a difference between them. This is not something I would do super often. Usually like just slope blur it or something. But I found this to actually kind of give me a cool result, which was get me the difference between the two. I could essentially offset it as much as I want and then get the difference between the two to be resulted with this effect. Essentially, I can adjust that from there to get like a mask that I want, and I used this mask here to get this kind of breakup on the inside, which, you know, most of this gets covered with ornamental elements on top of this anyway, but this just adds like an extra level of detail which kind of helps with the scale of things. It doesn't need to be too noisy. It's just the bigger read. Like if you imagine seeing this as a material, you'll see it from here. You'll see these bigger read shapes. I'm not too worried about it being like crazy detailed around this edge. It's just the bigger macro stuff that, because otherwise people aren't going to really see it. They're focused on the ornaments when they're looking at it. So you need it to be kind of heavy-handed in the background so they'll actually notice that stuff. So in this case, I blend that on, and then I blend my ornament color on, which is just like a flat, pretty much a flat value using that ornament mask that I generated as I added them all up here to create it. And with that mask, I was then able to, you know, start blending variation in that as well. I added this texture, which this was just one that I was looking into like if I was able to use this, but it was fine for me to use. So I used this image directly in here to get it to really match with the ref. Originally, I was not actually going to create this part of the ceiling. I was just going to do a part where it was fully ornaments, but I think that made it a little bit different because I hadn't seen as many materials people had made where they included that kind of stuff. And then in this case, I kind of decided in the end for this material, I did blend a little bit of AO like into the base color. It's not something I would normally do like very heavily handed or anything. I would kind of try and blend it in with, you know, dirt and stuff like that into the crevices. But for this material, there is actually a lot of depth because when it's on the ceiling, like it actually has like a significant amount of depth. And in my final render, this was something that I was tweaking, comparing back and forth between my final shot and the ref to tweak that stuff, and it just helped it look a little bit better. I just used the dirt and dust nodes in here, like the default ones that are in there, for this to start blending on different layers of grunge and dirt and things. Again, like I was focusing on bigger shifts because I was finding if I just make it too noisy, the material's already like inherently a noisy material with all the ornaments on it. So just getting it to have like bigger shifts in the gradient was helping a lot in the final result. And then I did blend like a tiny little bit of the curvature as well, just to make some of the shapes pop a little bit. And then yeah, like from there I have my base color. I pack the textures as well, and I also have them individually. I normally I just pack them just for ease, like plugging them in Marmoset and all that stuff. I don't have to plug in like every single individual texture. And then I took the thing into Marmoset essentially to do the final render for this one. Some of my materials I do in Unreal, some in Marmoset, but this one was in Marmoset. I'm not going to open the actual graph that I did for this one because it will be a little bit slow to open because there's a lot of different camera angles and stuff. But I could open this one a second. So just to show you like the renders and stuff, just in case people are interested in that. So like you can see, like I would do lots of different camera angles when I do it in Marmoset, like or Unreal or wherever. Do lots of different camera angles, different like lighting scenarios, and I'll be like adjusting that until I find some that I like. I tend to just create as many combinations of lighting scenarios, angles, all that stuff as I can, and then I'll render them all out. I'll then go through and I'll delete the ones that I'm not as big of a fan of until I cut that back. And then when I've got a few that I like, then those are the ones that I'll then keep in the Marmoset file or the Unreal file, and I will push those further to get to the final result. But yeah, you can see like in this case, for this one, you can drag. It's a little bit laggy. I think I displaced this a very extreme amount. Yes, very extreme amount. Okay, let me turn that way back. So in this case, like I'm able to get this kind of result, and then I can go through and set up however many lighting scenarios I want to do. And I usually just work on a pretty low subdivision, but then for the final render, I'll just whack it up to kind of something that I can export out for the final thing in Marmoset. But yeah, that's this material, and hopefully that shows like I used a bit of ZBrush there, Photoshop, Designer, splines, manual placing stuff, mirroring stuff to speed up the workflow, rather than just trying to do everything 100% in Designer. It sped this up, and it meant that it was something I got done in a pretty reasonable time frame for how complex it is. Probably would have taken me at least 4 or 5 times as long if I'd have made it fully in Designer 100%. So yeah, that's for this material. What we do in like time wise, how long was that?
I think you're good. You're 32 minutes in.
32 minutes. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty decent. Yeah, I
I
wanted
have
to
one
kind of like go
question.
through. Yeah.
Yeah, I get this question a lot
Yeah.
from my students. I'm not in the material arts department,
Mm.
but I get this question a lot. When is it good to apply height when showing renders for a portfolio? Is that something that, if it's not used in games very commonly, do you add this to your portfolio, or displacement and so on, or do you prefer rendering as, let's say, closely as it would be rendered in the game engine? What's your experience? What's your take on this?
So for me, I try to show I would render the thing with like I'm fine to render the thing with displacement in most cases because it depends what the material is. If you're making something like a cardboard material or something, yeah, it's probably not going to be displaced in engine for something like that on a prop. But if you're working on things like terrain materials for landscape and stuff, a lot of the time there will be height or there will be other forms of it like parallax occlusion mapping and stuff like that to fake that height. For a material like this, I want to show it in its best light. I don't want to necessarily. I could show this with no height at all, but then I'm not. I'm essentially matching this right now up with the ref, and then it would no longer match with the ref if it was essentially flat. For a piece like this could make it into a game like this because I could use something like parallax for this ceiling. I probably wouldn't displace the ceiling, but I could use parallax, or in Unreal 5, for example, I could even create like a section as mesh that's even pre-displaced out of engine. You could use nanite displacement for it. There's other methods, but for certain materials, I think it makes sense. But if you're making, like paper or cardboard or something, like it's not. It will still make the render look better, so I would never say don't use it. I would, but it's going to make less of an impact on something like that. I don't think there's really any time where you shouldn't use it essentially if it's for a render.
Cool. Thank you. I get this question a lot, and yeah, I guess I'm gonna save this snippet to show it to my students.
Yeah, cool.
That's great, man. So, I almost fucked up the screening.
Yeah.
So, guys, does anyone has any question on chat? Something you want to ask Joe personally before we move on? Yes, if you have some questions, this is the moment. This is the time to drop your questions before we move on to our next guest. And while we are waiting for your questions, Joe, you're gonna be also starting teaching now with us here at FMA. What is it that you're gonna what is it that you're gonna focus on, or what you can help people with during this kind of, or let's say, that's teaching you have?
Yeah, so there's some similarities in like what I've shown here. Like I think definitely like when people are learning, like showing people different ways of doing stuff. Not necessarily everything has to be 100% in designer, but also showing things in designer as well.
I think. Oh, well, that was it. He kind of went. His Wi-Fi went down. I think maybe. I can see his camera like, through an error. That's all right. Let's see if he comes back. Maybe. No, I think his Wi-Fi just died this time. So I think we're gonna have to cancel that one as well. So guys, we're gonna move on to the next guest today, and that's gonna be Javi. Yes. But before that, with Javi Benitez, we had a small gift for you guys, especially for your students. I think, Javi, that they are always looking for new resources and so on. Could it be that you have something for them today?
Yeah, sure. I think I have something great. Ezequiel is kind enough to be gifting out his beginner material creation in Substance 3D Designer course. I'm going to give you guys a link here on the YouTube chat so that you can receive a discount on that. Definitely don't miss the opportunity to get it. Save it to your libraries, and yeah, enjoy.
And also, don't you can share it with whoever you want. Yeah, don't be afraid of sharing. If you have a community, if you have a place or anything like that, share it with them. That link doesn't have a limit. Anyone who uses that link gets the beginner course for free. Yes, nothing else, nothing extra, and nothing in exchange, guys. It's just giving out something that it already worked, and I think it's better if you can use it as well for yourself. Yeah. Gone into buffering. Yeah, that's true. He went into buffering. Perfect. I'm also gonna send the link, and now we're gonna follow up with you, Javi. Now it's your time, your moment, your not presentation, but your interview, let's say. How are you doing? Everything all right so far? I see it's still early for you there.
Yes. Yeah, everything's good. Yeah, 6:30 in the morning Pacific, so it's probably the earliest I've ever been awake.
Sorry, I I tried to make the time as available, but I think I did a little bit math error in the middle. Yeah, it ended up being too
No, it's
early
all
for
good.
you there. So let's see. First of all, thanks for coming today. Not only for everyone who's watching, but also for me. I remember like 5 years ago when I was starting watching your tutorials and so on. So for me today, this is a huge thing for me personally speaking, and not only for the rest. And the idea of today's presentation with you is more kind of like interview that I've been doing during the last year and a half, where I try to show artists and students the other side of professionals, the other side that we don't see, because the side we are always watching is your portfolios, our artwork, the things that we do right, yes, in our career, but we never see the part where we had to actually climb the mountain to get there, before. So let's start from the beginning. Yes, what is it that took you to learn game art, and when was this? In, let's say, what time, what year was this?
Um, let's see. So I think I graduated. So I graduated high school in around like 2009. And to be honest, like I was graduating, and I really didn't have. Um, I really didn't have a plan or goal. Like just leaving high school. If I'm being completely honest, I saw a commercial on TV for the Art Institute. I'm not sure if you guys know that school, but it's now like no longer around. But
Hmm.
it was a local, I mean, it was a trade school around the country. There was one local to San Diego, and I saw that they were basically doing a game art course or a game art program. So that was kind of my only thing I really knew about it. At the time, I was playing a lot of video games, and I knew I wanted to do something. But honestly, like I had no idea what even game art was at the time or anything like that. So I kind of learned everything like from school, I would say. But besides that, I mean, I took some Photoshop classes in like really early on. So I knew I was pretty confident with programs like that. Just like the Adobe suite, but that's all I really understood of game development, I guess. So yeah.
And when did you start learning? Because, for example, if I check, your LinkedIn
Yeah.
profile, here I see that you started as an intern in 2011 as an
Oh
environment
yes,
artist.
yeah. So yes, so my first gig in the industry was an internship at Sony Online Entertainment. For those of you who don't know, Sony Online is now essentially Daybreak Games, which they're still around. But the way it worked out was the school. Like looking back at my just schooling, I can talk crap about it and stuff. Like it wasn't the most, it's like any other trade school, right? They're kind of there to get your money. Like they don't really care if you come out with a great portfolio or anything, but what they did have was a good relationship with studios around the area. So Sony Online was like nearby, and they had a really good internship program. So it was more of a class that I was taking that I needed credit for. So I basically, applied for the class, and luckily at the time they needed someone. So I started out as an internship. I worked the 11 weeks, and towards the end of those 11 weeks, my internship was up, and I basically just walked up to my art director and said, "Are you guys hiring for any contracts?" And he's like, "Yeah." So at that time, I was basically like in my final year of college, but also I had shipped my first game before graduating, which was really nice.
Yeah,
So
that's actually quite awesome.
yeah,
Like for many students, I think that's
yeah,
great. And I feel I really understand the part of that you mentioned about some universities, not all of them. Nowadays, we have better universities than in the past, like around the
hmm
world. But I do get that part of having universities that they're more behind the money of the students than many other things. And I've seen it in many students
Yep.
here at FMA who have portfolios and they're really proud of them. But then when you see their portfolios, and you see that, man, this is not good, especially for the amount of money that they had to put into. But you mentioned
Yeah.
something quite
Yeah.
particular that got me a little bit on there, and it was seconds. It was about the working. So you said you were working as an intern, but then you stayed there, isn't it?
Yep.
You started
Yep.
there.
Yep. I had yeah, so I
Mhm.
was working I did my quote unquote like class was internship. So I was there for 11 weeks to fulfill the credits for like my college course. But then afterwards I was like, hey, I'd love to kind of stay on. Are there any contract gigs? So they basically just converted me into a contract environment artist at the time. So I can only assume that I was doing pretty good as an intern, which then led to just a contract position.
Okay.
Sorry to
Great.
interrupt, Ezequiel. Joe is
Yes.
ready to join again.
Who?
He's waiting for you to
Oh.
let him join again. Joe, yeah.
What? I forgot he can't join unless I let him. There
Yeah,
we go.
sorry for the
He didn't
interruption.
know. No, don't worry. Hey Joe, you're back, my friend.
Yeah, no worries. My I was like, I was testing my internet elsewhere, and I was like, oh, it's fine on everything else. It's
Yeah, this
just
one can't
Discord.
just crash.
I-
Let me finish the
Yeah.
interview with Javi, and when we're done, we
Yeah.
can go back to it because I saw some people had some questions as well in there. Yeah,
Yeah, no worries.
perfect. So Javi, as you were speaking, yes, you were having the interview there, but then you started switching from studios. I see, although it looks like you have a gravitational pull to Sony because you end up in PlayStation at the end. But how were your next years and projects? Because you had a lot, like for example, I can see here Sindagi Games. I never knew that studio, but then you have Koshima
Yeah.
Productions, which is a big studio. But I'm more interested about Sindagi, for example, because I don't know it.
Okay. Yeah, so I was a contract artist at Sony Online, right? And the project was coming to an end. So my leads and art directors were pretty transparent about like, hey, not sure if we're going to be able to keep you on. So for me, it was a point in time where I can like start applying places and see where I can go. Around San Diego, there really isn't that many studios. So I knew I just had to go to Los Angeles because that was just the mecca and the hub of all the game art studios. So like it was kind of funny the way I did it, and this probably doesn't work now, but if you guys ever heard of gamedevmap.com,
Yes,
I
it works.
basically applied to every single studio on that map one night. I didn't care if they had a position open or not. And I was applying to senior roles, I was applying to junior roles, mids. I only had 1 year of experience, but I basically just cold emailed everybody. And the next morning I actually had like maybe 5 or 6 emails, to be honest. Most of them were like, hey, we're not looking at the moment. Hey, you're not quite at the level we're looking for. And then Zindagi actually responded like, hey, I think they had like a senior environment artist role at the time, but they're like, hey, you're not a senior, but we actually do have a like junior environment artist position opening up soon. So would you like to take the test? So that led to an art test, and I think that went well. Got an interview, and then I moved to Los Angeles. So that was kind of my beginning of moving to LA. I was at Zindagi for a year, and then I had a friend from college hit me up who was working at Kojima at the time. And I'll be honest, I didn't really know too much about Metal Gear or anything. I just knew it was like a pretty big like studio. So that was another art test I took. For that one, I would say that it was a lot of just like my connections in college, being buddies with my friend Jacob, who got me the gig. When I was at Kojima, everything was going good. I loved Kojima. I actually thought like at the time, I was like, I'm going to stay here forever. Like this is my end goal career. Like this is it. But then like shit happens like the whole stuff with Konami and all that, you know, back in the day. And then I had to like move. I had to be like, okay, well, this place is going to close down. Where can I go next? And I had made more connections like through being in the Los Angeles area. So made some friends at Infinity Ward, and that's how my next gig kind of played out. So went to Infinity Ward next and was there for like about a year. So yeah, so basically moving to LA honestly was more for me to just jump around, get some experience, and build out my resume, really.
Okay,
so I needed to just get more and more experience.
I got two questions out of that actually. Koshima Production was in LA
Sure.
before?
Yes. Yeah. They opened a Los Angeles studio from, oh man, I forgot. It was like 2013 or something like that. It was a long time ago. It was during the Phantom Pain. If you guys ever played Metal Gear Phantom Pain.
Yes.
So yeah, it was a brand new studio. It was a brand new studio. So it was really cool to work there as like the first people who worked in like the West on like Kojima games. So yeah, it was really cool. I learned a lot. Was really fun there.
Great. And something else you mentioned that I want people to kind of like get into this is a little bit of the process of how you went from one studio to the other one, and how you started by just sending, yes, your portfolio, your CV and applications, and then with connections started to go to other studios. I think that's actually quite important.
Yeah. So the Zindagi stuff, that was cold. That was a cold email. Like I was just lucky there. But when it came to like Kojima Productions and Infinity Ward, you know, I had friends reach out to me, like say they're looking, or I had, you know, through the game dev drink ups, through networking events in Los Angeles area, I was meeting more and more artists, and that was just me emailing them or just having like a brief conversation, like, hey, are you guys looking for people? Or sometimes they're like, not at the moment, but eventually we will. And that's probably like depending on where they are in production, maybe like kind of late in production that they need more people or just need bodies to get stuff done. So it was honestly, it's a lot of networking, you know. Everyone says, you know, network. I definitely like say it's true to that stuff. I would say that most jobs I have gotten in the industry have been through friends, networking, and just connections I made in the industry.
Yeah, I can agree on that 100%. My last job was also about networking with Emil. I knew him in kind of like event he was doing, and then from there I actually started working, and many other places as well.
Nice.
But something else that got me curious about it, they didn't mention before, was about not the hiring process, but your process on creating a portfolio back in the day where you didn't have ArtStation.
Oh yes, yeah. So that's a good question. I basically coded my whole website back in the day on HTML and like Dreamweaver. So, you know, back then I didn't have as many projects as like I do now. It was the stuff I had just made out of school, but also the first game I had worked on. So it was PlanetSide 2. So it was only like when you would go to my website back, you know, back when I first started, it was only like 4 different projects in there. And it was a few environments, a few props, but I think the thing that stood out the most was the fact that I had like shipped content on there. So like the first like game on there was kind of the first banner on my website, and I think that was the thing that attracted people the most. Just, you know, having game experience is like so important, and I think that was kind of what led to like other roles and stuff like that. Interestingly enough, when I did go to Zindagi, they were one of the first places I knew working on like a PS4 title, so that was super like interesting to me, and that's actually what got me even to go there, because PS4 was a new hardware, and like I don't think it was, you know, I don't think a lot of people were like working with it at the time, but that's kind of where I learned some new, like, that was the first job I learned PBR and Mari. So those kind of skill sets transcended into the next like game studios I worked at, because they saw that I knew PBR, and like that PBR was pretty new at the time, so not a lot of studios knew about it, or they were trying to get people who knew about it. So I think that also helped just transitioning to like different studios.
You mentioned something super important there, but part of what I was gonna ask, because you mentioned first Photoshop at one point, and now you're mentioning Mari. So for texturing, did you did both things? Like you did textures with Photoshop, and then when Mari came out, you started using Mari until Substance Designer final appeared?
Yeah. That's a good question. So back, like, I am old school. Like I could probably I probably have all my old Photoshop files, but
Ooh.
my first couple of productions, game productions, I have all my like PSDs from working in games. So yeah, and I started in Photoshop texturing, and then that's basically at the time when I was in school, that was the industry at the time. It was texturing in Photoshop. When I was leaving college, I think Endu and Didu were just coming out for the first time, so people were just seeing that kind of workflow, and they were kind of scared because they were nervous that I was going to overtake like Photoshop and just completely change the way texturing is done, which it did happen. Like everything kind of changed from there. But that first, me going to Zindagi and learning Mari, I had no idea what Mari was at the time. I was like, this is a new software.
It was quite scary
the studio
as well,
I
I
worked.
remember.
Yeah. The studio I worked on had like a custom. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. It was like, now what I had seen back then is what Painter is now, like for the industry. But back then, seeing you paint on a model and seeing all your channels get updated, I was like, oh wow, this is crazy. But then eventually that kind of workflow just transcended into like the rest of the industry. So yeah, it was the first time I got a look into PBR, into like software like that, like actually live painting on your models, as opposed to like what I was used to and just doing Photoshop layers and kind of compositing in there.
Yeah, it was actually Mari was kind of like I tried at the moment when I was trying also to do VFX, and it was I think that nowadays it's still being used in VFX industry. I'm not sure why they're not using Substance Designer in particular, but it's
Yeah,
still something they have.
I don't know either, but at the time, yeah, all I really knew about Mari was that it was used very heavily in VFX.
Yeah.
I think they tried the studio, at Zindagi, they had like a completely different workflow and were trying to get it to work for game art, which I think was pretty successful at the time. I think like back then, the big thing that Mari had was like the UDIM stuff. Like that was still pretty new, but now Painter has it. So a lot of the stuff that like I feel Mari has just kind of moved into like other programs and everything, which happens with every other program. So yeah.
Yeah. So before we go into the Substance Designer thing, which is maybe the juice that people want right now, there's something I'm seeing here that I really find a little bit funny, because you were working, in Infinity War, which was mostly Call of Duty games. Then you went Kojima Productions, all Metal Gear Sonic, Sindagi, PlayStation games, Sony. But then here I see you also work on Temple Run, the game.
Yep.
In Redemption Games. Okay, that's the cell phone game, isn't it?
Yep. Mobile games. Yep.
You made my high school years really fun with this game.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot because if you look at my resume, it was a lot of AAA, a lot of console, and then suddenly I jump into mobile. There's a couple things with that. Number one, mobile was getting pretty big at the time. Consoles were doing pretty well, but there was a surgence in mobile games. And for me, I'm constantly someone who's always wanting to learn. So moving from console to a mobile game, I was trying to see like the pros and cons to it. Like for me, the pros were, okay, well, I get to work on a new platform. I get to know the limitations. I get like kind of learn that whole workflow. They were using Unity, which I had never used before, which was another like bucket list on my like resume. Like, hey, I have like different engine game experience. So that was really nice. But honestly, like when it comes for like more of a personal life thing, I wanted to come back to San Diego just because I had my friends and family here. So LA was, it was nice to build up my resume, but I've gotten a good chunk of work done in Los Angeles. So now I can start trying to come back home and just apply to studios that were a little bit closer to my friends and family pretty much.
Perfect. Yeah, I can feel that as well. I never took the chance, or let's say the decision, to leave the country for any studio, although I had it once.
Mhm.
I kind of regret it a little bit now because I think it would have been really fun to have that experience, but I was way too young for that, and I was really afraid at that moment.
Yeah.
But I did do something I see that you also did, that was freelance for Decagon here. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't do for
Clinton,
Decagon. I
yeah.
did for many other studios, but I do remember having a friend of mine, Marshall, who was working at Decagon at the time, telling me that he was also working with you, and you did a lot of things with them, as far as I remember, isn't it?
Yeah, that was kind of the first, I would say, like reach out for me for like freelance. I'd never really done anything like that. And at the time it was really new. Like Clinton was just building out Decagon. So
Mm.
he was reaching out to all these artists and I was like, sure, I'd never, again, every single kind of thing that I try to jump onto is like a new experience for me. So that's why I say yes to a lot of these things. So it was the first time I've ever really done any sort of freelance. So trying that out, seeing what that's like. And also I just want to help out a friend. So that was also a win-win for me.
Is the studio still running? I haven't seen anything from them for a while now.
I've not. I haven't kept up with Clinton in a while. I think it is. I know they're constantly releasing new packs and stuff like that on Fab and like Epic Game Store and stuff like that. But besides that, I haven't really like caught up or anything.
No, I haven't seen that either. I was talking with that with some of the guys the other day as well about it. Now, from here you went to Intrepid Studios and you work on Ashes of Creation.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
something really specific about here in LinkedIn that is showing that I'm about to ask you. Yes, because I think that this is mostly around this year between 2017 Decagon and 2018 2019 you started maybe with Substance Designer because it was around the moment it got released.
Yep.
How was it working in Cherry Studio? What were the games that you were making at that moment, for example, without getting into NDAs?
Yeah, no, of course. Intrepid Studios, that was one of the newest studios that had opened up in San Diego. They're still currently around right now. Again, like San Diego doesn't have a lot of studios, but the ones that are here have been around for a while. So that's one of them. That was my transition from Redemption working on Temple Run to Intrepid was more of it wasn't like my decision. Redemption had layoffs, which was another experience, being laid off, having to go through that whole thing.
Yeah.
So I had to like find a gig pretty quickly. And luckily I had already been talking to Intrepid for a little bit, did their art test, and passed. And then that's kind of history from there. They were working, I think they still are currently working on a new MMO. Like you mentioned, Ashes of Creation. But it was my first. I had like they hired me as an environment artist, but I was using designers so heavily at the time that my role kind of transitioned a little bit. Funny enough, the first time I actually was using designer in production wasn't there. It was actually on Temple Run. So
Really?
a lot of the textures that I was doing on Temple Run were like Substance Designer, super stylized stuff. And it was at that studio, no one had really seen what designer was doing. So I was kind of showing like what the abilities I was basically trying to implement it into our pipeline at the time. Like because the team was so small in a mobile game, we just had to like crank out a lot of textures. And I was like, dude, this is going to change like just how we create textures, how we like add more materials into the game and stuff like that. So
yeah, the workflow overall.
And the workflow. And that was kind of an interesting point in my career because I was using it at the studio, but I was also like learning it back like at home. Like I'd spend time watching tutorials, the few tutorials that were out at the time at home. So I was trying to better myself with the program while still implementing it at work. And then when I transitioned into Intrepid and working on Ashes of Creation, same kind of thing happened where no one at the studio knew what it was. No one was using it. But I kind of started showing the artists like, hey, like, check this out. Look at what I'm able to do. Because they were still doing everything like, by hand, 1-to-1, like still trying to like yeah, just it wasn't working like a procedural way like Substance
Yeah,
Designer is. So
not the same way we
that
do
kind of
today.
got me starting. Yeah, that kind of got me starting to show like the other artists on the team like how to use the program and like the benefits and stuff like that. So I kind of just became the like material guy at work, and yeah, just kind of went from there.
Great. And actually, I have a small like question out there, because I remember that when I started learning, yes, substance designer. Of course, I'm younger, and I started learning like 5 6 years ago. It was 2020, I think, or 2019. There was almost no resources. In fact, the first resources I got that
Yep.
were really good were from you. Yes, that we're gonna talk about that because we are almost getting to Learn Squared, yes, and many other places where you started to be an instructor, yeah. But overall, yeah, how was it trying to learn substance design in a moment where there was basically no information? For me, at that time, even with tutorials, it was still hard because one thing is having the tutorial with the answer already on the table, and the other thing is then trying to
Yep.
do something by yourself. But having to learn substance designer without even having a small tutorial about it or not that much information, I think it's even 10 times harder. So how was it for you at that
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, so for me, it was difficult. Like I mentioned, like there wasn't a lot of resources. So the ones that were online at the time, I basically like tried to, try to take in as much knowledge as I could from the few resources that I had. The one video that was super important to like my learning and everything was Rogelio Ogin's Gnomon tutorial back when he made a cobblestone. That was the first full like substance tutorial I ever watched. I forgot what year it came out, but that was like I watched that like so many times to try and learn all the different like nodes and processes. So that was a huge kind of video or like resource that I always used. And then at the time, I was at the time, um, I was actually working with Josh Lynch at Infinity Ward. Like we were right next to each other in the office. So I know he was using it like quite a lot and was really good with it. So he was there to help me with any like tips or tricks that I needed or any sort of guidance, because he was the one like resources. Well, he was the one resource that I had like at my disposal, because because he was like so close and we were just friends and stuff, and coworkers. So he definitely helped me get up to knowledge with designers. So
Great.
yeah.
And I think I'm gonna keep this question for later though. It's more kind of like something more updated to today's day. But from Introvert Studios, from learning substance designer, then you started to teach substance designer. And I see you don't have it here, but I remember that you started with Learn Squared, then you went ArtStation, and also YouTube with NVIDIA, if not wrong, basically.
Yeah, the teaching stuff, I'll be honest, I never really saw myself like teaching at all. It was kind of funny. What had happened was ArtStation was very persistent. They kept wanting like to like me to like do videos, and I was like, I don't know about this. I don't think I'm very good. I've never done this stuff before, like, because there's one thing about creating the art, but then there's another thing about teaching it. Like it's a whole different, I would say it's an art form of itself, like teaching. So I finally like caved. I was like, all right, let me try it. And sometimes I look back at those videos and man, it's hard for me to watch them because like, either my way of teaching has changed, the way I present myself and the way I talk in videos is different. I didn't have a great setup. Like my mic was awful. I just did not know anything about recording or anything like that. So but I'm glad I did it, because I'd rather that content be out than not at all. Because even now, I still get hit up about that stuff all the time. Like, hey, your videos helped me a bunch, and I'm really, that's all I really wanted when that stuff came out, is like, as long as I help one person, then I'll know it was worth it, for me at least. But then with those small little tutorials, it just got me more and more comfortable speaking, recording, and just like teaching designer. which then just honestly led to more opportunities. I got hit up by Learn Squared after the initial ArtStation stuff. They were looking for more substance designer teachers at the time. I think Daniel Theiger had just released his course, and they were just looking for more content to fill their website with designer stuff. So I did that whole class. I didn't know anything about Learn Squared at the time. I didn't know anything about Mache. But my art director at the time, he was like, "You should." That was one of those. I was kind of like, I don't know if I should do this. But my art director at Sony, he's like, "You should do this. This is kind of a big deal." And I was like, okay. So a lot of these like opportunities, I'm like getting people to hit, like basically tell me like you should definitely do this. So after Learn Square, that came out, and then NVIDIA, that kind of comes full circle because the same friend who helped me get the job at Kojima was working at NVIDIA now at the time, and he was the one who approached me like, "Hey, we have this NVIDIA series. We're looking for more designer content. Like, would you be interested?" And I was like, "Sure." So again, like it's kind of interesting because I feel like my career played out in a time where all this stuff was brand new. Designer was new. I had just learned it. Now it was like this resurgence of everyone's trying to look for content or people who knew designers. So yeah, I kind of was just in the right time at the right place at the right time with everything kind of just building up during this whole substance stuff.
Well, and nowadays, and I think I'm gonna drop the question now here, the one I was mentioning before. Nowadays, things keep changing. Yes, for not only for material artists but for everyone else. Yeah, and it comes more with the software because now I see more softwares that are trying to imitate Substance Designer in a way, but with their own tricks. I think one of them was Instamat, and then there's another one that I got access to, and I tried a little bit that is with AI, kind of like nothing like Substance Designer, but it's kind of like prompting and then generates a material PBR. I had tested. It's not something that big, but it is something that it generates something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to say what are your thoughts on this, but how do you see that process? Because you've seen Substance Designer starting from nothing, and then it became something really big. Do you see maybe things of platforms like Instamat or maybe something more integrated with AI being something that might be happening in the future for textures?
I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I think one thing that is super, like, I think one thing that a lot of the programs will take are node-based systems. So I think like the fact that Designer is very node-based is transcending into a lot more other programs, like you mentioned, like Instamat and even the AI stuff. Like I know Comfy UI, I think that's like the latest like AI stuff. That's all node-based. Unreal's node-based. I'm super interested in Houdini's node-based system. So I think like because knowing Designer was heavily like node-based, I think a lot of the programs, that's one thing that they are going to try to kind of replicate or at least make it a little bit easier for users who are used to that system to easily kind of jump into these other programs and be comfortable with them as well. So that's kind of my take on it, at least.
Yeah, when I started with Houdini last year, for me it was quite easy to start like understanding how it works thanks to that. Mostly about how nodes work, how you use them, how to move around. It makes things easier, but well, of course, it's Houdini, and if you want to build a procedural system, you need to learn geometry and many other things to make a building, make it procedural. So there's a lot of other things in place out there. Now, going back a little bit to what we were speaking, yes, something I didn't mention there, but I did want to talk about, and it's something that I talk with every material artist, is that in your case, you started as an environment artist, and as things developed, then you started to be a material artist in your team, and even material artist roles started to appear. In fact, as well, for me, my first job was an outsourced studio for AAA games, and in there was no role for material artist at that moment. In fact, I think that the only ones with those roles were you, Daniel, Enrico, and I think I'm missing someone else that had a role of material artist. But then the rest were all environment artists focused in materials. how did you felt that transition after Intrepid Studios? Like, did you feel it was a big impact in your responsibilities going from maybe someone who was an environment artist with focus in materials to just a material artist?
Yeah, definitely. It was a transition for sure because, like you were mentioning, I had never really been in a full-on material art role, so I didn't really know what to expect, like how much of my environment workflow would translate to the material art task, or how much would I still be able to do from environment art. So a lot of like that transition was actually having to let go a little bit of some of the like stuff I used to do as an environment artist and just strictly focus on texture creation, but also the new aspects that it came with being a shader artist. So creating shaders, creating textures, doing UVs, and helping at the time my modeler like set up all that stuff and set up the level with like shaders and all that good stuff. So it was kind of me learning what the responsibilities of a material artist were at the time and trying to just best navigate that whole situation. Because as an environment artist, you're kind of a little bit of a generalist in the sense of you get to touch a little bit of everything. You know, you get to make your modular kits, your textures, world building, you know, level creation, all that stuff. And now I had to like let go of certain elements of that when I got into more of a material focused role. And it was more of a collaborative role too, because instead of working like almost siloed in your whole level, you're giving your level chunk and kind of like filling it out with all your stuff. I'm having to collaborate more with the environment team, seeing what they need, and also just collaborate with my teammate at the time, who was my my modeler for our levels. So yeah, it was just honestly learning what the new responsibilities were, and also divvying up the workflow. Like, how does it work? You know, being on a group with environment teams and a material team, like who does what on a pipeline. So, oh, I think I lost your mic, or you're muted.
No, I muted myself because I was having
There you
something
go.
got into my eye and it was really bothering me. So that's actually a question that I was doing myself when I started, because when I started working as a material artist, I didn't know what I should have done, and where I was working, they didn't know either, actually, because I was the first one to get in there. In my country, in Argentina, game art development is not that much developed into teaching. They are seeing a lot of really old stars. Like, I think they are not even looking into PBR. I've seen, well, it happens in some countries, let's say not in all of them. But when I got to work with them, they were great. But again, they didn't know what I should have been doing, so they just threw me to the textures. That's it.
Yeah.
But nowadays, how would you describe, yes, the, let's say, responsibilities of material artists in the team? Because I know that it also changed a lot from studio to studio.
Yeah. So I can't speak again, like that's a great point, because that's one thing that I always tell my students, that like every team is different. You know, every like I can only speak from my experiences on like how what I do at, you know, my studio. But for me, like responsibilities are texturing and shader creation, UVs, and very small like modeling. I mean, I would say it's changed a lot more as of like this year, but back in the last couple projects I worked on, it was, you know, just standing up the level as best as I could, letting my modeler do a lot of the heavy lifting when it came to the geo, and me taking all that stuff and either applying like block out colors, shaders, textures, just getting the level stood up on the texturing side while I let my modeler do a lot of the geo edits and stuff like that. And so that was that's currently like around my time at Sony. When I was at Intrepid, it was still me navigating a lot of like the general environment artist stuff. So like world building, you know, modeling, kit creation, and stuff like that, while still creating shaders and textures for the rest of the team. So again, it kind of varies on what kind of project you're on, or like what team dynamic you're on. So yeah, I think it just varies, but a lot of the stuff is similar in some sense. Like, you definitely get to make textures. How much time you spend in Substance Designer, I think it differs from studio to studio.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've been working in studios where I did only, like, literally only substance designer, but then I also did other things like shaders, for example. Yeah,
Mhm.
in the projects. But now here I have David. Yeah, who's making a really, I mean, he's making a very good point about if nowadays, as an environment artist, should they be proficient in substance designer or not? Is it that important as an environment artist, or should they leave that to material artists as well?
No, I think environment art should, like, to me, like, if you're an environment artist, any tool that you learn is just another tool set in your, you know, in your career, right? Or in your workflow that you can utilize. Like, most studios, if you know more programs, they'll probably see you as like an asset because you'll know at least some of it, that you won't have to rely on like other artists or other material artists or something like that. Like, if for some reason, like, you're an environment artist and maybe the material team is kind of like, they're
Yeah,
kind of like
heavy.
already already tasked out, they're kind of working on different things, and you come in as like a new environment artist and you're like, man, I really need a texture for my level. Like, you have the ability to kind of create your own stuff, whether or not it be like final or maybe just a block in or something like that, just an idea that you can at least have like a temp opportunity inside of your level. That at least gives you, like, it basically unblocks you, so you don't have to be waiting for your texture artist or material artist. So I think that's always super beneficial to have any sort of knowledge. So
Yeah, I think I didn't believe that environment artists are in the core multitaskers because they can do a lot of things. They don't do just one thing. It's kind of like a
yep,
specialization that is not a specialization, but it depends on studios. I know environment artists who are focused on foliage, besides doing blocking and many other things. But I also know environment
yep,
artists that don't do that and they do materials plus blocking and many other things.
yep.
Sorry, my voice is getting a little bit. My bad. So let me go back to the questions at hand here. So from teaching, yes, you did have, like, once you started teaching, it looks like you never stopped so far. You went from Learn Squad to Laguna College, then you went to Newman, and finally Think Tank Training. Oh, you there, Javi? Or is it my Wi-Fi? Did we lost him? No, there you are.
Oh, I thought I lost you. Okay.
That's all right. So I'll go over it again. So from Learn Square, yes, you went to different other places to teach, and I see that you really took a liking on it because you went from making tutorials to actually being a mentor, which is different to just making tutorials. And I can say that also from experience from this last year and a half. How did that felt for you on like kind of having that transition of being not only material artist who many people knew and look up to being actually there for the students?
I definitely liked it because I like the interaction with the students, like actually one on one, and like helping them, because like, tutorials are great. Like, I still watch tutorials. But one thing about being able to like teach in person or one to one with someone, it's not like about like watching a video and replicating exactly what I'm doing to create the final result. It's more like concepts and like ways of thinking and like just your whole mindset that you can pretty much describe to a person when you have them one on one. Instead of like me basically just telling them like, hey, do this, and like this step, like, 1 through 10, and just follow it and you'll come out with this result. Because, some people don't really like, yeah, some people learn like that, right? But I find it more impactful if they understand why they're doing something. Because a lot of people who watch my tutorials, they'll just follow along and have no idea what like what I'm doing or like my thought process. So a lot of the times my newer tutorials, I kind of like pause, have a brief discussion like, hey, this is why I'm doing what, and what is happening here, as opposed to like just kind of keep going and hope for the best at the end of the video. So I think
Yeah,
it's really important to kind of like, you know have those conversations with like students and stuff like that.
yeah. In fact, when I started with FMA, I think that the first 3 workshops or classes I gave in the server were pretty much prepared beforehand, kind of like me just
Mhm.
going over the notes. but I still felt that there was something missing. And I've been teaching like I think since I'm 13 years old. So it sounds crazy, but yes, when I was really young, I needed a job, so to get some money. And when I was 14, I was already playing basketball for quite a long time, and I jumped into teaching other people. And
Nice.
since there, I kept going till I was maybe 23, 2 years ago. So I always teach, I always love it. And when I was doing this for now substance design, I realized that what people were missing is that just what you said. What is it behind the problem we're trying to solve? How did we got to the conclusion that we need this to solve a problem? Because in substance designer, there is not just one solution to one problem. There's many solutions.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've seen
Yeah,
people
yeah.
like I recently make with, like, for example, a rock system that combines your technique plus a technique of someone of the community, and it gave me a new result that was completely different to the one I was using before. So you can always do better. You can always do something new or different depending on what is it you want to achieve. So yeah, I think that it's important to show people not only the solution delivered in the silver plate, but also give them the chance to kind of like see that we do not know everything. We have to fight for the answer, even when we already found it before. So from mentoring, you finally went back and closed the circle and got back to PlayStation after some long time.
Yep.
And right now, yes, you already are not anymore an environment artist. You're playing clear a material artist, and you went from senior to lead. And I think this is maybe a question not only for students but also for those who are professionals. What is it that makes a senior? What is it that makes a lead in your experience? In more or generic terms, because I know that there's some point where it's not only about the skill and knowledge you have on maybe your subject, but also it's about how you manage people, how you manage projects, how you art direct. So what is it that make you any of those makes you available for any of those kind of jobs?
Yeah, so I think that kind of comes down to like the team dynamic and like, just how the team is structured, because most studios, when you get to like senior, there's always that it's either like actually most when you get to senior, you kind of have to make a decision. Do you want to be an IC or do you want to be in management? So do you want to continue to be an individual contributor, or do you want to start going into management? So those are the two like paths that most seniors take. If you choose to continue to be an independent contributor, you'll likely end up in a principal or an expert role and continue to be one of the best people on your team. Like you are so good with the software. You're so good with like, whatever that workflow is, you're the guy. And then when you start going into the whole management thing, it's like how you work with other people, how you can task other people, and more so looking at the scheduling and being very, I guess, just good with tasking out people, getting people on timelines, and just getting the level stood up as quick as possible, which I think managers and principals kind of work really closely in pre-production, because those are the people that typically stand up the level or get like, a lot of that pre-production stuff done early on. So
yeah,
for my transition, I think it was a little bit of both. It was kind of a weird, not weird, but like it was an interesting time because I didn't have a lead at Sony at the time. Like when I first got into PlayStation as a material artist, I was the only texture artist on the team, because once again, if we go back to like what we were talking about, it was still relatively new. So a lot of studios were just getting their first material artist or just creating that first team. So I was basically the only texture artist at the time. And with that, I think that I was able to inherit a lot of knowledge early on with that. It just came to materials and textures for the studio and stuff like that, which then slowly, as more people got on, or as we hired more people, I was kind of that point person to like, hey, we have a new texture artist. Can you do a little bit of onboarding? Can you show them the whole like workflows and everything like that? So that got me to introduce some of my teaching habits and some of my mentoring stuff at work to actually like, illustrate those skills. And I think just from that, being a people person and just like having a lot of like eyes on that whole like group inside the studio, it was just a natural like just promotion or
Choice.
progression. So yeah.
And you went more for that side, let's say, the side of being around people, being around helping them, rather than, let's say, the guy who's just logged into texturing all day.
Yeah, I'm in a very fortunate situation at work because I do handle a lot of that stuff, like mentoring and helping people with their issues and like day-to-day workflows and stuff like that. But I'm lucky in the sense that I'm still in the box creating content and creating art. I still have my own art like centric like tasks, levels and stuff like that. So I feel very fortunate because I know a lot of leads sometimes they art is like completely gone. Like, hey, you're not touching art anymore. You're in a lot of meetings and stuff like that. And to some people, that's okay. But I was very transparent when I got into like a leadership position that like, hey, I would love to just continue to do some art wherever I can.
Yeah,
you know, maybe I don't contribute as much as I used to, like being an individual contributor, but I still really enjoy like creating art. I'm just an artist at heart, so yeah.
Yes, I do get that feeling. For example, now with FMA, I'm doing content all the time, so it's more me kind of doing graphic design, marketing, trying to bring new people to the server. Well, events like this one where I try to gather people together, you know, so they can learn from each other. But when I do the mentorships and I teach people, most of the times what I do is I show them how to do it, let's say. And when I do that, most of the times I just get lost on it. Like I just go on working and working and working, and I don't say anything, but I just keep working. And maybe half an hour went, and I say, "Oh, dude, I'm sorry, I didn't explain anything." He was like, "You don't have to explain anything. Like I that was great. I don't know how you got there, but I saw the process and it was amazing." And it's kind of like you get that feeling again of making something because you like it, you know, and not leaving it behind.
That I had to that's something I definitely learned teaching, especially like at Nomen and LCAD, was to slow down and ask questions a lot. Like, yes, like the students are there to ask questions, but you yourself as a teacher should also ask and be questions to your students. Like,
exactly. Yes.
You know, did you understand what happened there? Like, do you need me to go over stuff? But I think pauses while you're teaching, for breathers, for them to really like, you know, because I had that issue where I was just going for a full hour, not like straight teaching, talking. I didn't stop. And people were either like lost, they had no idea what I was doing, they had me go back and stuff like that. So I think it's nice to have a breather, nice to kind of explain stuff and just have an open dialogue with all that stuff. So
yeah,
I think it just helps them a lot more.
Let's say in pieces. So let's say if I was recently helping a student make a stone wall. So for example, I knew that we have to look, okay, so that's the shape of the stone, then the surface details, then this. So I divided in blocks and I work full focus on one. When I finish, then I just ask questions, see what they have to say or ask. And if they understood anything, great, we move to the next one and try to kind of like split it more in those areas. Let me see. I think I had some extra questions around here. I don't remember much.
I'm not sure if we lost him though, Ezequiel.
Oh,
can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't see you.
We can hear you.
Okay. I think I lost my camera.
Yeah. That's all right. Don't worry. Well, I have a question that I always do to, you know, every professional artist that comes to the studio, and is, do you have any other plans for the future for your career? Yes, is there anything else that maybe you're looking forward to or you would like to explore? Because I think that being a professional for us, yes, in our industry, is not something like you get a job and that's it. You just keep the job.
Yep.
It's, you need to keep growing. You need to keep learning new things. You need to keep developing new levels of quality or of knowledge. What is it that you're looking into next?
For me, honestly, it's just continuing to learn new programs. Like I've been using Houdini a lot more at work, so just kind of developing that whole knowledge base and just trying to just trying to see how much better I can get with Houdini. Honestly, I think the challenge right now is there's so many. I feel like there's so many new programs coming out lately. So many new workflows.
Yeah.
It's just trying to keep up now, really, with just the ever-changing climate with the game industry. There's
Yeah,
so many
well,
new things happening. So,
well, that's also another
but
question I was gonna do later. But if you want to finish first.
yeah. I would say like for me, like I mentioned, I'm like an artist at heart, so I never stop learning. So as long as I'm at a point where I'm constantly learning and constantly like, pushing my skills and developing them, I think that's kind of what I'm driving for in the future, is just continue to become a better artist and continuing to learn and grow pretty much. And with that, I think like on a more like professional level is just create more tutorials, create more content, and just honestly just try to help more people as much as I can. I think that's like the most
Perfect.
important thing.
You're welcome to come again here at FMA to help more people as well. Always, so don't be afraid of hitting me
Yeah,
up.
for sure.
Um,
For sure.
And well, the other question I have, that I think is a question that is not only mine. I have my own opinion on this, and I'm quite, let's say, specific when it comes to finding a job, industries, getting fired, and so on. Let's say, I'm very stoic about it. But there are some people that are really worried about it, and they want to. I don't know if maybe you have another point of view of what's going on today in the industry, and maybe how it will develop. Like if they ask me, for me, it's just a restructure. They're just restructuring how things work, and because of that, their studios closing, and then there's also new opportunities in our studios as well coming out. How do you see? How do you see this in the industry?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, it definitely sucks with everything going on right now. It's honestly hard for me to say with the whole restructuring. I don't think I like view it as that. I just think it's just I think development costs are just becoming way too expensive, and studios need to like be a little bit more,
Cost productive.
I guess, like knowing, cost productive and knowing of that. Like I think most studios can't spend 5-6 years anymore. Like they have to be a little bit more cognizant of time and production costs, because things are only getting more and more expensive. And unfortunately, with costs going up, I think that is when, studios might run out of money, and that's where those like cuts have to start happening, which is very unfortunate. So I think that's kind of my view on it. It's just like having like the studios have more accountability on like just time and costs and stuff, pretty much. Like I think that's kind of the biggest thing.
Could it be also that maybe, and this is something because I really felt it as I was growing as an artist and also as a gamer, because I still play games. Could it be also that these kind of costs and time management increased as we also started to focus a lot more in the realism of the image of the games, like how good a game looks, making it more, let's say, harder and to create, taking us more time to make it, and even having to use more, let's say, expensive softwares as well, like with new technologies and everything. Like for example, nowadays most games have ray tracing. Most games want to be hyper realistic, and I feel that also by doing that we kind of forgot the core of making games, that is making something that is fun.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think right now we're getting diminishing returns in the quality of games in terms of like how much realism can be pushed at this point because of all the technology we have. Like the amount of like polys that we could throw on screen and everything, and like the different shaders and stuff like that. Like even though our limits are getting like higher and higher, the quality of the image I feel like is still relatively like similar with you compare it to like something from like last gen or the end of last gen or something like that. Like we're getting to a point where even if we start adding more and more stuff, I feel like the image is still to a point where it's like, hey, we've kind of reached that sense of realism, I think, to the point where like, hey, like, do we have to like step back and really look at like, are we trying to like really create realism? Because I thought the whole idea of like, at least for me, when I play a video game, is I want to step out of realism. I want to like not be in that world, right?
Exactly.
Like, so I feel like we're pushing so much into, man, I like trying to replicate real life when in like most gamers, they don't want to be in real life. They just want to have something enjoyable and fun to look at and play and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
So
mean, if you're
I
coming
think kind
back
of
from
like,
work and you want to relax and anything, it's like I don't want to go and play a game that is about my work. I want to play a game that takes me
yeah,
to a fantasy land or anything like that. But
yeah,
yeah, I do
absolutely.
get that feeling. In fact, have you tried the beta for Battlefield 6? I don't know if you're allowed to say anything about the competition and that, but have you tried?
No, I haven't played it yet. I haven't played it yet, but I
Mhm.
have buddies who are working on it, and it looks really awesome. Like I haven't had time to like jump in and play. So
Yeah, but something really
though I
particular I
want to.
noticed is that I've been playing before Battlefield 6 came out on the beta. I was playing Battlefield 4. I just went back to it because I liked that game and was part of my childhood memories. When I started playing Battlefield 6, it's exactly Battlefield 4 in the gameplay, but with better graphics, and that's just great, and people loved it. And I
Yeah,
think that
yeah.
there's some things that we need to take from the past, from games that we beat before, that still work, and they keep working with better stories maybe, and focus more on that than anything else, you know. I
Yep.
think that also on PlayStation, one of the games you guys create, that is God of War, I think that's one of the best examples. I think I never had a God of War that I didn't like, for example, since I started
Yep.
playing them. So that's actually something great. Before we keep on, Javi, I know
Nice.
you have to leave. Javier Benitez, wait, the other Javi.
Yep.
So thanks for
Yes,
coming today, Javi. And well, just you know, guys, next week Javi and I will be doing a podcast as we used to do in the Game Art Uncovered. Yes, it's a podcast we used to host together before, and now we have more time for it. And we're gonna be doing portfolio reviews for material artists and also prop artists and well, environment artists as well, isn't it, Javi? Or you want to start
Yep.
at the prop?
Everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
I specialized in environment art and props mostly. So that's where I think I could give more of an insight. But I get like everybody's welcome, and yeah. In any case, everybody, Joe, Jovanvir, and Javier, thank you very much. It was great to meet you all, and I guess we'll meet again sometime. Have a good day.
Perfect, man. Thanks for coming and
See ya.
for giving me a hand as always. I'll see you around.
Yeah, of course. A
Bye-bye.
pleasure. Bye bye.
So, yeah, we were speaking about, well, the games in general, but I think I already ran out of questions for you, Javi. I don't know if you have anything else to say or that you want to add about maybe this topic or something else, something you want to share with people or students. If not, I might have a question
No.
that would be not for me, but for everyone. What do you recommend in
Sure.
today's world if you want to be a material artist? How would you do it in today's world, for example? What would you change now
Yeah.
that was different from before?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think definitely developing your environment art skills is super important when it comes to a material artist these days. It's great that all these roles are like available for material artists, and it's great that a lot of people are just jumping from like college or university, or even just like self-taught to jump straight into a material art role. That's great, like I love that. But I think some of the most successful material artists have a environment artist background because they have a knowledge of what it takes to completely build out an environment, and also that whole workflow and pipeline. How does material art fit into the environment art pipeline? So I think having those skills, whether it be like world building, like model creation, like how that all fits in a production, is definitely going to be super helpful when it comes to like material art roles or just like becoming a material artist. So I think that's super important.
Great.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's just quite well. I mean, I do get that feeling. I mean, in all my works, well, jobs, sorry, not works, but my job experiences, I always had to get involved into the environment part in one way or another one. Like, I feel material art is a complement to environment art. It's like we need both of
Yep.
them together to work, and we need to understand both ways, kind of like to get them working. Yes, in there.
Yep.
So Javi,
Agreed.
thanks a lot for coming today. It was really a pleasure to talk with you, and it was really fun. I hope you also enjoyed today's chat we had. And
Yeah, loved it.
and thanks.
Thanks
And
for having me on. I really appreciate it.
no, you're welcome. And well, if you want to, any time you want to come back, or you want to do something particular to in the community on the server, or you have an idea, just drop me a DM and I can make that happen as well. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, awesome, man.
No, you're
Thanks, I
welcome.
really appreciate it.
You're welcome. So, guys, oh wait, they just dropped me a question.
Sure.
It's a good question. I think it's gonna be. I mean, maybe for you, this question is gonna be different because you live in a country which is the USA, which has a lot of game art studios. But I have here Ian, who is a student of mine, and she's asking, as an environment artist who doesn't reside in a country without a lot of AAA studios, what is the best approach to get closer to my goal of getting a full role in a AAA studio?
Yeah, that one's
It's
let's
a
see,
tough
best
one.
approach to get closer. Yeah, that one's a tough one because it doesn't reside in a country with a lot of AAA studios. Yeah, that one's a tough one. Honestly, just be seen, really. Like whether that means like create more content, like more art on your art station that can be like seen by a larger population, maybe writing articles and stuff like that. I think that's kind of the best thing, is just try to get your art out there and seen by more and more people. One approach is like, if you feel comfortable, definitely like even starting small, just doing any sort of breakdown or tutorials or anything like that can be super beneficial and helpful, especially like if they start helping a lot of people. And I think for most people or most studios, they tend to look at that kind of stuff like, hey, how do you do with like mentoring? How do you do with teaching and stuff like that? Just because if you did like gain a job at a AAA studio, they might look at you for those kinds of like things like, hey, we're having more people come in, like, can you teach them? Can you mentor them and stuff like that? So definitely like the most important thing is get your art seen by more leads, more directors, more artists really. And I think that can definitely lead to a AAA game job.
Today, I think it's a little even harder to do that than before.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many people out there, and communication and access and information, it's so easy right now that it generates a lot of noise. So, for example,
Yes.
in my experience back in the day, when I posted the first material that I did, that was not the first material I did, but the first material that did great, that got me closer to the job. I think got 4K views, which is not a lot, nowadays in nowadays numbers. But at that time, in our station, that was big, like 5-6 years ago. It was really big. But
Yep.
the thing is that, as you said, it's not only about the numbers; it's about who sees it. Because maybe you have 20,000 people watching it, but maybe none of those people are the ones that need to watch your art to give you an offer of a job or give you a hand. Like from the materials I got, I think I got from he was a senior material artist, senior environment artist at Gunfire Games, and he saw some of my work and he started helping me out of that. And thanks to him, I also learned a lot of new things, and from there I got my first job. So I think that exposing your work as much as you can, that is what we're gonna be working this weekend on, your mentoring, is something really important if you're really, really focused on trying to get into a studio. There might be some problems, like for example, I had once, I don't know if I want to say the name of the studio. It's a big studio in Germany, and I was doing the art test. I passed the art test, and when I was going to close the deal, they told me, hey, we found someone that is not as you, but he lives 5 blocks from the studio. So we don't have to pay anything of what we have to pay for you. So I'm sorry, they told me. But they were honest, at least, and that can happen. And it's unfortunately, but it can happen.
Yeah.
That's why I also do outsourcing. It's kind of like, for me, it's better. But well, Javi, I don't want to retain you anymore. Thanks again for coming today, and wish you the best, my friend. It was really, really entertaining.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
thanks.
really glad you made it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and yeah, I'll stay on to keep listening to
Perfect.
Jovan and Joe because they got some cool stuff. So
Yeah, Germany is gonna show a little bit of the destruction in there, isn't it, my friend? But wait, before we go with Giovanni, you guys, I saw you have some question for Joe Taylor. Do you guys have any question there on chat, either in YouTube or for the patrons who are with us in Discord? Do you have any questions you want to go in right now, or would you like to directly go with the next exposition? Because I haven't seen any there. I have Joe. Are you there, my friend?
Yep.
I have one question.
Hey.
Here that was an old one. Yes, Max was asking, how do you keep track of so many segments of the material without losing yourself while working in such a big project as the one that you were showcasing? Yes, the one I think was the ornamental rooftop.
Yeah. So I tend to do like a few specific things when I organize things, just like in every project that I ever work on. And I've kind of like changed that as I go, like as I progress. But I tend to do this kind of layout. So I make myself a template like this. In a normal graph, like not the complex one I showed earlier, I would like work on the height. I just copied and pasted this just to show like an example, but I would like work on the height straight through the middle. I keep it all in a straight line. I have all the blend nodes like all lined up. I have like what I'm blending above and like my mask below, so it's like I can follow it across. And then say I work on like my color map above. I tend to just like I add a frame to it, and then I have this habit. I make a frame and I just like get like the green channel and go like that, and then that's like my color, right? And then when I do my roughness, I do that with the blue channel. I just do that because it's like quick and I can just put stuff in a colored frame. So that's like how I normally do it. But then for like that bigger material, that's kind of the reason why I broke it down into like trims, like the kind of like unique ornamental parts. Then I had like the layout graph, which was specifically for like where like building the whole like layout of the material. And then I had like the main one that had like pulling it all together. I used a lot of like reroute nodes in that material because I think it was around the time, like not that long around the time where like the dot nodes like got added where you could do reroutes and stuff. So in the past I was always, adding like a lot of like connections and trying to keep them from overlapping. But in that one because that just came out same as like the splines, I just went like crazy with using those. But I tried to still comment all the boxes. You can add like pins and stuff so that like as bookmarks to them to different areas. But I try and just keep it all very neat and structured, the same as if I was in like Unreal or something in a material.
Yes, that's great. I have another question, but I think this is more a generic question that is not for substance designer in particular, and it's for all of us, all four of us. And I already know my answer here. Al Papa has one question for us that is for everyone, and is: as an artist, do you dream or have an interest in making your own game? My answer is yes. I always wanted to do an indie game, to be honest, for myself. But you guys, did you ever had kind of like that interest or any idea kind of like pop out, like say, it would be nice to make a game like this?
I actually know a lot of people I work with now are all like working on their own like little projects, like little games, which is kind of funny because I can think of at least 5 or 6 people that are just working on their own game right now. But for me, not so much now. Like maybe like in the past I would have felt like that, but for me now, like I kind of like the working like together on like a bigger project at a scale that I couldn't kind of pull off on my own. So I'm kind of like more content in a way, like working on like a a bigger project in that sense.
Okay,
At the moment,
great.
yeah.
And well, we were talking about this before, but you're now gonna be joining us in FMA, but we are gonna start teaching together with something new. I don't know if you remember. And for those who don't know, yes, we are trying to change a little bit how we uh, help people to learn, and not only learn, but how to start in their career by not only showing you how to use Subset Designer, how to include an environment, and then showing your project to studios and let them have the chance of buying it, so you can get your money back and you can also have a freelance as first project. So guys, if you're interested in something like that, Joe is going to be taking care of that. He's going to be teaching and helping specifically for a set of environments, isn't it, Joe? What is it that you are going to be mostly focusing on doing this new type of mentoring that we were speaking about before?
Yeah, I don't know if you have already, if you're sharing anything like the actual like images or anything or
No, I
not,
didn't
but
actually.
um,
Let me see if I can find them, but I think I don't have it here. I have all saved in a really small folder with a password and everything. So I have to
okay,
share it in a moment. But we did have the
okay,
concept, I think. Let me just take a look here.
okay.
But yeah, pretty much
Yep.
most of your projects were gonna be more kind of like organic, yes, environments with
Yep.
rocks and many other parts as well. I'm not, if I don't remember badly.
Yeah, my like, although like I showed this, I showed something that was very like hard surfacey, like with the work that I was showing today, like that's something I've done less of comparatively to like natural stuff. Like at least professionally, like I've done way more stuff on like natural organic materials and stuff, and that's kind of like the thing I prefer over like doing like hard surface environments. But like that project, that's why that one was one for me of like focus on something that's not
Yeah,
in like my comfort zone with that kind
I
of stuff.
dropped the
Um,
concept.
yeah.
We dropped the concept we got together on
Yep.
chat if you want to take a look into it. But yeah, this is the kind of works you would be kind of like getting into mentoring, isn't it? With a group of 4 students, trying to build this environment together, get to know the workflow not only of the materials but of the environment, and then making modular to give it to the studio so they can use it as well.
Yeah, like breaking down the environment into like bits that you can reuse and make like a modular kit, or certain bits which could be part of like a kit bash workflow, getting like getting like assets, getting the actual like shaders set up for these things. There's nothing like I don't think there's anything like too crazy on the shader wise, so there should be a decent amount of time to spend on like working on the actual like materials and getting the materials looking really good
Perfect.
as well.
Great. Now we have more questions now. As we were speaking, new questions came out. Yeah. So Valentina here's sorry, Michael Ferrantino is asking first. Did you look into realistic material properties for this material? Yeah. Roughness, metallic, albedo. I know that there are some artists that do it, and there are other artists that don't really do it because they want to be more, let's say, artistic. But in your case, are you more used, or do you follow more the guidelines of PBR over it, or how do you work on those aspects?
Yeah, so usually like if I'm working on something where I'm aiming for relatively realistic, like it can still have like stylization to it. Like if you look at something like The Last of Us, where it has, it leans towards realistic, but equally has a lot of stylized tendencies of different things. Like it's what makes it like have like the art direction and like have like something interesting that isn't just a one-to-one replication of like a photograph or something. Usually I will look at scan data to get like my general kind of value like nowadays, because I worked a lot on very like heavy scan projects, and so there is scan assets and then there is also procedural stuff, so we need it to like be close enough that it blends and you can't tell the difference of what's scan and what's not scan. So a lot of the time I do bring in something like from Megascans or like textures.com or something. I'll bring in like a base color, and then I'll like use that to compare against. If I'm working on a cliff or something, or like a soil ground or something, I compare that to something to at least make sure I'm in the relative range. Realistically,
Mm.
for a lot of those things, it varies when it's organic. Like you could have like a soil ground that's a very different value to another one. So it's, to some extent, there's also then having liberties to just adjust things and not stay like one-to-one. When it's things like metallic and stuff like that, like I do stay, I for the most part stay to like kind of like the PBR rule set for stuff to begin with. But then if there is like things that you need to then change to get the look, I'm also not like worried about breaking that. Same for things like AO. Like if like it's not the most ideal in some cases to put AO like straight into the color, but then it's like for certain materials like that one I showed earlier, like I tested it before and then with that and did like a comparison, and with it I was getting a lot closer to where I wanted it to be. So I'm also like not worried about pushing things in a way that's not not as accurate to get it looking how I want it to look.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Valentini, he's dropping another question. For complicated materials like the one you show, would you use all the different software and step if it was to make it for a game to keep the workload and time frame less?
So for most things that I work on, usually it's not as like that material is very like time consuming to make that material. If I was making that for a game, I would likely, I mean, if I was, it depends what the project was. If you were in an actual game, like if you think about the environment that would be in, there'd be a lot of in that real world location. There's a lot of other assets and materials that would be matching that. So if you're going for like a one-to-one recreation of real life with that, you probably would be better in that case, like creating either like scanning things or just creating like reusable parts. I would probably build, if it's like the environment, I would get all those parts that I just built and then probably put them all into a trim sheet or something, because it's the kind of environment that's, if you try and make 10 tileables like that, it's going to take a long time. But for that one, that I was going with the mindset of getting the time frame down, so that's why I was jumping between different softwares. But if I wanted to make that quicker, I could have taken extra shortcuts as well, because I was trying to get it very close to the ref. But I could take shortcuts. For example, I made some elements where, like I showed before, there was a couple of elements where every other element, it was slightly different, but it's not enough that it would break the overall visual if you step back from a macro perspective. If I was in production, I wouldn't have done the second variation. I would just skip that bit. Equally, there's other bits where I added like variations on the trims. Like I made 2 or 3 trims that were kind of like 70% similar, and then I did like the differences to match one-to-one with the ref. But if I was making it for a game and I was in a bit more of a time constraint, you could cut down on that, and realistically the overall image wouldn't have suffered from the distance you would actually be seeing it in a game.
Great. Perfect. So I have no more questions, Joe, for the moment. Thanks for today, and thanks for the help that you always give me, my friend. But now we're gonna move to our next and final guest, who is Jovanvir. Are you there, my friend, Joe?
Hey.
Yeah, ready as always. How are you doing? Everything all right?
Yes.
Enjoying the
I will say,
morning?
not really, but I'll live with it.
Yeah, I
I mean, hey,
understand. I didn't sleep
I
much
mean, at
either
least I got
yesterday,
more
so
stuff to do.
yeah.
Same. But I mean, I got motivated. I heard you guys talk. I was meant to have a more simple graph, but I think I went a little too crazy. So now we're gonna see
That's
my
all right.
noodle.
Oh, your noodle.
Yeah.
You made a spaghetti noodle today in Designer for us?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Let's see.
It was not meant to be this crazy, but it
Okay, yeah, that looks more like my graphs. Yeah, I can see that happening. So
But yeah, no. So today I was just gonna share like
mhm.
some of the stuff I usually get at work, like the kind of materials that I get to make at work.
Mhm.
Usually we, when it comes to organic stuff, we have a big tendency to scan a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes we make it in house with designer, with some, UZ brush sometimes. But usually when I get tasked, I get a lot of like, hey, could you make like
let's say you have a clean wood floor, can you make the damage version, or could you make like we call it a reveal, where you can like pretty much paint variations and stuff like that. So I was just gonna showcase like how, one, I would add details to the material. Two, how to the like how damage would I get it to, so that once obviously, again, this is all looking at it in designer. We all our final look dev happens in engine, so anything we do, we have to see it in engine. But pretty much, yeah, and obviously you get to make wood, so it's always a fun
Yeah,
project.
I like wood. Uh, so
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you during your, let's say, your presentation. Guys,
Mhm.
in chat, if you have questions and it's something really specific, just throw it as fast as you can. Yes, of course, those who are
Yes.
in the Patreon and the server, Discord server with us, will be able to, let's say, do it faster than those who are in YouTube. But despite that,
Mhm.
keep sending questions if you have them. Yeah. So let's jump to it.
Yeah,
Let's see what you have
yeah,
prepared
because I'm
there.
gonna keep the presentation short, and then try to answer as much questions as I can.
Take your time. If
So
you want to take an extra time, you can do it.
okay,
It's you.
okay,
You can choose
cool.
to.
All right.
We are on schedule, so don't worry.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Perfect.
All right. So pretty much, I'm gonna start with making like the wood patterns and stuff. So first result was trying to make these like big shapes, having like big warps that I can blend in with a more finer one. I'll get to that. So same process. It's always going to be gradient linear. I think Zico, I saw something on LinkedIn that you did pretty much the same. So
Yes.
I pretty much copied what you got. So so I
Let me
got this
see.
some
No, you
gradient
did change
linear,
some things though.
transformity. Of course, yeah, but pretty much did the gradient dynamic and
That's what I like
gradient
of that
linear.
about that
Start
node
with that.
for wood, because it just like you can
Yeah,
change some maps and still get really great and crazy results. It's just about exploring what we were talking with
exactly.
Javier before. Like, don't just go and copy what someone does. Do your own version of it to get more original or even better results.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, pretty much gradient linear. Ezekiel has a really good quick tutorial video on it. Took my directional noise, blurred it, and started creating the shape with the gradient dynamic. Gradient dynamic pretty much handles most of this. And from here, created more variations, started creating these noise patterns. So to break pretty much have it not to be like super clean lines. I wanted it to have some warps in between of it. So that's like the noise I decided to make with directional scratches, levels, um, blending it together. And from here, so this is pretty much my finer. And the way I made that was taking one of my gradient linears, leveled it, directional warped it with directional noise. And it started creating like this, finer shape look. And from here, slope blurred it just ever so slightly with a cloud. I mean, you're gonna see cloud 2 a lot of times in my scenes, and go from there to slope blur grayscale, directional warps. Again, you're starting to create those wood grains, and I do have a reference that I like to keep my references pretty small, like just stick to one or two that I really like, and this was enough for me because I really wanted to get this kind of like I didn't go this bright, but I'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, no, I just wanted to start creating like the wood pattern shapes. So blurred, directional noise, warped it, super low, not too much. And from there, when I got my base shape, yep. So my finer wood shape, I blended it with my noise. Instead of warping it, I just blended it just because you start seeing a little bit of it trickling in and out. Without a mask, just did a copy And from there, I created like a quick histogram mask from my noise and blurred it. And then when I was blending my big shapes in there, I used a little bit of a mask. And from here, this is just my blends that I do from, because I created 2 different kind of noises. Here's like a more horizontal wood shape, levels, blended it, and pretty much from here, I got my wood texture that I needed. And from here, I needed to do like a little bit of like a fine warp. So we start seeing, again, we're doing super pixel pushing. So just doing a little bit of a directional warp with a directional scratches. Start getting that horizontal warp and with a fractal sound bake. And here I got my final wood shape that I'm happy with. Always can come back, and this would be the one thing I would, if you see from here, like maybe I did branch out in one area, but this would be my final wood shape that I would be, if I want to make changes to it, if I even decide, hey, I want to use a scan, I would just plug it in right here. And from here, I wanted to randomize it to the tiles. I didn't want to go too much on making the tiles, but just to start, like these are like the most main steps that I like to do. I use a tile sampler. I use my edge detector on top of it to create my pattern. But I still like to have like a, because here I started randomizing it, but I really wanted to get rid of the black, all these like black pixels. So for that, what I like to do is just blur it. So blur grayscale, so I can create like something that pushes it almost 100%. Even these pixels, I'm not too worried about it, because when I start doing my directional warps, well, here you see a little bit of it, but I try to avoid all the noises if that wasn't there. Because if I show as an example, you can start seeing I start creating this, which I just didn't want, and it's just cleaner for me. From here, I did a directional warp, but instead of just doing a directional warp and just leaving it like this, because then you start seeing a lot of this, like you're still seeing those, it kind of does like a mirror effect sometimes. It kind of just does like an offset effect, which you start seeing like, oh, okay, you're just seeing the same thing twice, like right over here. The way to mitigate that is just quickly grabbing a transform 2D. It's a quick way to like, start. And it's more fun because then you can actually see a lot of the stuff that you're doing live. I did 2 different kind of directional warps with the same intensity. The only difference is the input on the first one is transformed a little bit. The second one is the original. And when I blended it, I just did a flood fill grayscale with the edge detect histogram scan and just blended it so that I start getting more variations instead of here, like seeing that same effect of like, oh, you're seeing the same pattern bleeding into the other one. Here, it's fully broken up, no complaint. Then this part of it is pretty much trying to add the wood texture in the height map and the normal map. So I'm not gonna go too much over it, but it was just a simple like just blend with a multiply super low, nothing too like I just wanted this to be more of like a finer wood shape. I'll show as an example. You could just see that the wood is just really low intensity. You're just trying to break up the shadows from it. So not didn't want it to mess around too much with it. The only part that I went more crazy on, sorry. The only part I went more crazy on is the color. So I'm gonna focus on a little bit on the color and the gloss. That's usually like my, like I like to focus more on my albedo and my gloss. Height map, I can keep it quite simple. Like I can show you like how my height map is just reacting by itself. Just the height map by itself, and the normals, again, very, very clean, very simple, like nothing too crazy. But the albedo is where I like to usually let the material shine. So from here, I took the original wood shape after the directional warps. I did do a little bit of a sharpen initially, just so I could, again, it was, I was noticing I was losing a little bit, just trying to let's see if I can pop it a little bit, and it helped. I will say I did do the intensity a little high, but I'm gonna see what it does in the difference. Actually, you know what? I will keep it like that. I started with a little quick gradient map, just grabbed like whatever's in the image that I had over here, moved it around, started moving some of these little dots around, and kind of got what I wanted with this. Did another one where I wanted the darks to be really pushed, and that's not how I like usually start. I like to still blend these with something. So I had my base color. So this base color I always determine again with some sort of PBR wood color. Like it's a good way to start instead of like, oh, like using the gradient map to just start by grabbing an image and just doing like the color drop or the color select. I like to just have like my one base color be my PBR value that like here if I make changes to it, it's gonna go, you know, throughout the material. And it's just a good way to just, you know, get a good start on it. So from here, did my initial wood pattern. I multiplied it. I noticed that it went really dark. So I did do a little bit of levels. Again, it is starting to get a little bit orange, but the brightness and the brightness value is what I'm trying to match as much right now. From here, did a little bit of a mask from my directional warp blend that I had all the way up here, so that they kind of match. So I wanted some parts to be darker, like especially the bigger ones. Blended it, copied, just had a little bit of a opacity so that I'm still kind of seeing the underneath. So, but I didn't want it to pop too much. You could see it doing it live right over here. And from here, I added this just after. Is I did a quick non-uniform directional warp where I wanted to really like kind of start introducing these finer noises. And the quicker way for me to do that was by just using a directional noise, using a non-uniform directional warp color, and really just keep the intensity low, but crank up my trail length to 123. And you could see what it does. It starts like bleeding. It start pushing from one side to the other, like right here. So I wanted to kind of create that effect. And trail fade 1, trail curve, I kept it so you could see what it's doing. It's just kind of more intensifying the trail length effect. And I blended it on top with a little bit of a copy so you can see it starts leveling all the material. Like it's just the dark parts are not too strong. They feel blended and they feel like one fine wood grain. After this, I started adding a little bit of this like dust on like the crevices and like just like the using my normals. And here I'll go show you how I made the mask. Started with, let's see. Oh, okay, perfect. So I started with my initial edge detect, did a quick non-uniform blur, inverted it, blended it with my edge detect. And that's how I can create like where I just wanted to add those dust effect on like just the edges of my material. And obviously I did do more to the, from here I did a quick levels. I blended it with the wood grain, so I started seeing some of this bleed coming in. Leveled it out a little bit. Blended it with a fractal sum base noise. And here multiplied it with my randomizer. Obviously, yeah, you're seeing like some of this bleeding in, but it didn't bother me too much. Here, multiplied it again, and from here I was able to kind of like minimize this. It again, it didn't do too much because this is still the early stage of the material, but it was just a quick way for me to like start seeing like some dust, some like noise starting trickle in on the edge. And here's like where I did like my big dust, like all this like, like when dust cakes up, I wanted to kind of get that effect on the on this wood texture. So for that, I started with a fractal sum base, blended it together with another fractal sum one, did a quick gradient map. I think here I just pretty much again grabbed like this little section of my texture, increased the darkness, made the hue go more red. Because if you actually look at dust caked up, sometimes it actually goes towards red, but then I still kind of did reduce desaturation a little bit. So I still, actually, I don't mind getting a little bit of the red in there, and played with the levels so that it's more less noisy, less contrast. And this is what I pretty much blended with the same mask a mask that I took from my normal map that used the dust node, blurred it, and pretty much got what I wanted with the like the caked up dust effect. And from here, I leveled it a little bit because I think I was having a lot of contrast, and I wanted to just have the overall material be not as dark and more dusty, and starting to just create like bigger noises. I took my initial fractal sum base, played with the levels, and just did a quick just blended it on top. And here I was starting to because if you look at it in the reference, you don't see a lot too much of the wood grain. So I think I was showing a little bit too much on the wood. So I was like, let's just add an overall dust. And this is the result that I really like. Because you could see from top view, you do have a big area, which we can get back to on like, oh, if this seems like it's tiling too much, especially in the engine, that would usually be called out. So, and just for this material, I really liked it, so I'm gonna keep it. And again, played with the levels. And from here, I did do a quick grayscale conversion off my material that off the albedo that I was working on. I quantized it so that I don't have too much noises, auto leveled it, and played with the levels so I have a really strong mask. Blended it with my initial noise that I used to warp my wood, and just started to really like push these brights a lot more. And here you can see with this mask, I'm really just pushing these wood grains a little bit strong. Before and after, and then add, and I'm just blending in the initial texture back on. I usually do that like quite often, where I'm just using masks to really build up my albedo. From here, got my here I'm gonna go back. So I did use a curvature smooth. I leveled it, and here I was starting to get like some of this the wood grain that I blended in the normals. I took that and just did a quick blend with an add, where I was just really starting to push these wood grains that I definitely blended in the normals, so I wanted to be pushed. From here, I was noticing that I wanted it to be more on like the hue of it was being pushed more to the red side. I wanted it to come to the yellow. Like here, if you look at the reference, it's really starting to show up in the yellows. Instead of just doing it to the initial material, I like to just blend it on top. So I just did a quick HSL, increase the saturation by 0.51, and blended it on top with a little bit of opacity height. Here I have more control on what I really want with the material, so you can start seeing that it's doing that. And then I took the initial material, leveled it, and really push these bright spots. And for that, I'd use the mask. The way I got this mask was by going back all the way to there we go. Going back to my initial blend warp, directional warp blend, and just doing quick levels. It's probably the same intensity that I blended it in the normal map, and blended it with a another mask that I created from where I had the dust cake up. I wanted the inverted version of it, played with the levels and blended it on top. And that's where I was able to get this really like start popping the woods and start seeing some contrast, but in some of the areas, not everywhere, because here still like it's still masked, still not. It's always in the middle. I wanted it to really show off. You could see it over in this reference. You can see starting all this happening. So I wanted to replicate that look. And from here on this one, I didn't do too much. I just did a quick soft light. It was just really letting it pop a little bit more with a mask. Again, I use a lot of masks, and it's using always the same. I use my initial. I like to just blend the same texture and the texture with a mask. And here I took. Let's see. I took this mask that I created and did a quick grayscale conversion of this, because this is where I wanted to really just take the darker spots and really like push it a little bit further, and just did a quick grayscale conversion, leveled it so I kind of just mask out the darker areas, inverted it, and blended it with this, and subtracted it so that it's really pushing the dark. You can see. And from here, again, we still got a little bit to go. I did notice that when I was like, especially in the darker areas, I was still kind of missing like a little bit of contrast in there. And for that, what I did was took the normal map from the wood grain that I made. I used light and blended it with this node, did a multiply. So I start to just, pretty much grab this finer detail, but like here it was, I feel like I was like missing a lot of information. For that, I brought up the levels, blurred it so that they start connecting and feel like they're one wood grain. And I blended it on top. Again, this is like super subtle, but instead of it being just one giant dark shape, I really want it to be broken up with a little bit of these lighter wood pattern. From here, I started working on the crevices. Till here, we've been just working on the overall wood texture, the wood planks. From here, I decided that I wanted like my crevices to be just almost like caked up, worn out, not too much on the normal details. And I did use a uniform color to just use a blurred. I'll go all the way over here. So I took my initial edge detect and I brought it all the way over here and blurred it and blended it with just a color map. Then decided to just take a quick uniform color because I wanted to pretty much level out my whole overall material. And here I just took a base color. It's a little bit more saturated, a little bit shifted on the hues, and blended it over it with a 0.9. And took a grayscale conversion from there. I leveled it again. And here I wanted to create like this noise that usually we see in scans. So I was trying to replicate it so that whenever this material sits in the world with a scan, that it, because sometimes when you do scan work, you see some of this artifact. I wanted to replicate that artifact, and the way I did that was taking a blue noise fast, and I changed the rotation on both of these, so they're different. 1 0, 1's 1, and I blended it, and I took a multiply where it's again a little bit masked out, not to the overall material, and I just did a quick divide. And the difference is it just starts creating this artifact, this noise that usually we see in scan. And sometimes sometimes we don't like it, but then that's that's um, that's like a good way like to just fake your materials so that they kind of look like scan. And here I wanted to just use my use like the see I use my height map because it's a little bit softer rather than using my curvature maps. I just took that, leveled it, and just blended it on top with a multiply so that everything just feels like it sits together in the world and nothing is a little like here if you see the difference. And here it kind of starts bringing in all, feels like it's been a little bit worn out and been stepped on. And use a sharpen node again to really pop those it's like creating like another artifact on top. And pretty much I got my final albedo from here. And from here I did do a little bit of a gloss work. I wanted the gloss to be quite flat. Just took a grayscale conversion of my albedo, leveled it, blended it with just like this dark gray, and blended it with this smudge, almost like this mop looking effect. A quick way to create this. I mean, usually I would do this in like a separate note in a separate scene so that I can have randomized. But for here, I just did a quick anisotropic noise, blended it with the pyramid shape, scaled down, leveled it so that I kind of just get a heavy contrast. I blended it back with, or directional warped it with the initial anisotropic noise. So I kind of get this smear effect and blended it back with the anisotropic noise. From here, I took a non-uniform blur because I didn't want this to be like this noisy on the edges. So I did do a quick non-uniform blur and used a directional noise that has a lot more information and blended it on top with a subtract. And to create the sweep effect, I just did a directional warp with a gradient linear. And here I was able to get my, usually I would have like a bunch of different pattern inputs. But you could just do this in a different scene and bring it in as a node and just randomize it. Quick way to do that. And here I just did rotation random, position random, increase the scale up so that they kind of like, touch. And I blended it on top with an overlay. Played with the curves a little bit and reblended in some of the wood grains that I felt like we were missing. Played with the levels and blended in some of the height map, which really again helps sit back all the material. Clamped it and blended it back on with a min so that it just reduces the effect of the contrast. And again, played with levels, sharpened it, and was able to get my gloss that I was pretty happy with. Yeah, I pretty much wanted to keep this short, just focus on working on the albedo. And you could see most of the work was done on the albedo. And even the height map, normal map, sure, including the wood texture, it is more nodes, but I like to really focus on the albedo And that's pretty much what I wanted to show.
Great. Let me just pull my camera up again. I just covered.
And then I definitely don't
doing some
mind
stuff.
getting it. Oh, I can't hear you.
What? Can you hear me?
No.
No?
Let me see if I'm.
You guys on stream, can you hear me?
Say something?
Hello, hello, hello. You hear me, guys? You can hear me. Okay.
Yeah. Do you hear? Do you guys hear?
Yes, they're hearing me.
Yep.
One
I hear
second. I was able to hear everything earlier.
Can you hear me, Javier? You as well?
Yes, I hear both of you.
Okay. Maybe you mute me without realizing?
That's weird. I can't hear
Oh
anything.
my. That's the first time. You can try also kind of like dropping the call and just trying to join in again if you want. I can add you there. Oh yeah, he's not hearing. Type to him, he cannot hear you. Yes, that's right. Let me just.
And you guys are able to hear me?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Does he
So if
hear?
I started sharing it, it's...
We can solve this.
Maybe try task manager.
Yeah.
That's
The old one.
like that's what happened with me earlier. Like I restarted Discord and it just didn't do anything. I'd rejoined the call a couple of times, but then task managing it off and
Yeah, the
it
thing
worked.
that the stage works really weird, and many times it happened that it even closed the stage without even letting me know. So it's still kind of like something that they have to develop a little bit better, I think. Can you hear us now, John? Junior? No? Yes? Can you hear us?
It should work.
Yeah, Michael just Joe, can you speak to him, see if he hears you?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
No, I think he can't hear any of us.
I don't think he can hear anything. Maybe his Discord's like just
yeah.
I don't know, change his setting, or is it's not hardware muted, right?
Discord, or check your audio coming from your headset. Let's see. That's one of the things I don't like about stages, but they are also so useful. Okay. In the meanwhile, I got some questions from some of our students. Yes. One of the questions is Joe Taylor will start measuring your server, right? Is the content from him included in the Patreon too? No, guys. Mentorings are meant to be 1-to-1 or 1 to 4 to 5 students in a group. Yeah, depending what is it that you aim to learn. And those mentorships are private for the students. As a student, once you get in, you can record those sessions and save it for yourself. You can't share them, and we're not going to be uploading them to the Patreon. What you can see in the Patreon of FMA is mostly the workshops of anything we do in here. Yes. This workshop is not going to be in our Patreon. It's going to be in YouTube if YouTube re-uploads it, because it has sometimes some moments where they say nope, and that's it. But on the Patreon, what you're going to find are tutorials. I'm going to be uploading a new series soon, mostly for Unreal Engine shaders, and also a light version for YouTube. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. For mentorings, yes, when it comes to Jovanvir and Joe, They are both taking now students. Jovanvir has already started with it. Joe is about to start this month as well. And if you're interested, again, as I said before, you can just go to the website of FMA that you have the link in the description, or I can share it with you in the chat. And you can just go to the bottom of the page and enroll. That would tell you to a call with me, and we can talk about what you need learning with. Yeah. So yeah, it looks like his Discord really died. Let's see. While we wait, Joe, do you have? You said you had some extra graph. Do you wanna pop up some of them?
Yeah, I
Do
can.
you have a short one while we wait for Joe? Oh wait, he's
I've
back.
got one. Okay, no worries.
Let me see.
I just have got.
Can you hear us, my friend, now? Weird.
You guys hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear
Yep.
us?
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I think I
Great.
pretty much had to close everything because I think designer pretty much heated up my computer. Yeah. Sorry
That's
about that,
never
guys.
happened to me, but yes.
Yeah, that was a
Designers
first.
wasn't that bad.
I feel like it has to happen when we're live.
So, guys, do
But-
you have any question for Jovanvir for his presentation of today about wood creation and pattern creation? Vice Flower, when doing these mentorships, how large of a project would you work with a student on? Would they just work on a material of you, or try building a small environment with them? If you choose to work with Joe Taylor, you're gonna be working in an environment, yes, with other free students, and you're gonna be focused with him in mostly all the aspects of the projects, from organization to basically the material creation part, that he's gonna be the one who's gonna be really taking care, and I'm gonna be there as well for those kind of mentoring. Yeah. When it comes to the environment part, it's more kind of like a teamwork, or let's say it's not a mentorship itself, it's more like try to train people in a different way. So it goes and depends a lot on what is the project. The project is the one that we shared before, that is the one we have here on chat. Yeah, the main concept of the castle and so on, with many other organic shapes. Now if you go with a mentoring with Jovanvir or me, it's going to be a one-to-one mentorship, focus on one material or more, it depends. Sometimes I have taken students where I help them build the materials for their environment projects, yes, and we have those options also with Jovanvir. Mostly. But what is it that also, are these mentorship reserved for only students looking to break into the industry, or will it also be open to professionals looking to level up? Yes, we are also open to professionals. Actually, I am talking with some other studios, because there are studios who want to have their artists know substance designers. So that's something I have planned in the future. That it's kind of like nothing for the moment, but we'll see later. I also had other professionals, not only for the gamer industry, but also from design industry, coming out to learn substance designer. So yes, if you are a professional and you want to learn substance designer, you can also come with us, and this, depending on what is it that you want to focus, you can choose any of our mentors, being Joe, Jovanvir, and I. Yes, and Jovanvir, you want to explain a little bit of what is it that you maybe how do you say experience when teaching in this case?
I mean, again, it's always going to be focused around game ready materials. Like, again, I make always usually like realistic materials. Not too stylized, but no, it's just focused on like pretty much working in designer mostly, and trying to maximize designer with the smallest amount of nodes as much as you can. And again, be fast in designer, because in production you don't have usually a lot of time, and it's better using, again, designer is a tool, so you want designer to again, you just want to be super proficient in designer, being quick, and troubleshooting faster, and just yeah, pretty much like that.
Great, perfect. Now I have a question specifically to what you were working with, Jovanvir. Yes, from Mike, I wanted to ask why did you blend the same albedo node on itself with a mask, but then saw on a later node that you use an add blend mode? And I guess my question is answered. That's how I'm trying to phrase that question in a better way for myself. So the question would be, why did you blend the same albedo node on itself with a mask?
Did I? Shoot.
Maybe when you did the
I hope I
sharpen, I
didn't,
think.
but
No. It could happen. I always do the same, kind of like to control a little bit better
I'm
things
pretty
sometimes.
sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if I did do that, I know for sure I probably did do some. I mean, if I did, I will look back at it. If I did, that would be just. It's early in the morning. It's
It is
I can't
really
believe I
early.
did that.
What time is it for you
now,
now, right,
now I need
guys?
to look at it. I mean, it's 8:40 now, but still.
Okay, yeah, but you can take a nap now.
Hey, that's
You
a
guys take a
good
nap.
catch though. I swear to God.
I mean,
Can't believe I did
here
that.
it's
Let's see if
later,
I
but
did
I
do that.
didn't sleep much yesterday, so I'm also kind of dying, and I wanted to go ride my bike. I think I'm going to leave a little bit before doing anything.
Yeah, no, it looks like I didn't do that.
He says
No,
he
I
also
didn't.
said that it is a technique you use quite often, so it might be something else than the one that we kind of figured out there.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the same texture, then I wouldn't usually do that because I would at least adjust the texture a little bit that
Yeah.
I'm blending back in.
Kind of like if you do
It's
some
even if
color variation or anything like that, you blend them together and then you kind of like control the opacity.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, I'm like looking. I don't think I did. That would be a waste of a node.
Not that heavy of a note, but it's alright. Okay, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see you have no more questions, and well, it's already earlier for you as well, and I don't want to take more of your time. So thanks a lot for coming today. It was really nice, and I am already getting messages of people saying thank you for the event, and thank you to all of you for coming and being so open to do something like this today and sharing not only what you know, what you experience, and what you like to do in the future. Yeah, guys. So a big thanks for each of you. And also thanks for everyone who's watching, because without you this wouldn't have happened. Yes, without any of the people in the Discord community or anyone who still supports me since I started 1 year and a half ago. Yeah, so a big huge thanks for everyone. And if you want to say something, I think this is the moment. If not, you can just call it a day as well.
I'm gonna just say thank you guys. It was cool seeing Javier and Joe. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep. Yeah, thanks for the invitation. Cool stuff from Joe and Joven. If you guys need any help, just hit me up on. It seems like a lot of people are adding me on Discord now, so if you guys want to chat, just hit me up here, anywhere, really. Thanks again.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's been good. Hopefully, like someone picked something up or found something useful from tutorial bit.
Great. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for coming today, to all of you. And well, Jovanvir, Joe, you're gonna be with me for a long time for what you see now. But Javi, again, as I mentioned before, if you ever wanna come back or you have an idea or you wanna show something in the community, don't hesitate. Send me a DM. We can always arrange something, yeah, for everyone. So, guys,
Sounds good.
thanks for coming, and I'll see you next week. Remember, for those who are in our community, we're gonna follow up with a workshop on base color, and we're gonna keep on texturing the roof tiles that I was making. Yeah. So once again, thanks, and I'll see you around, guys.